episode 10 of the main numbered episodes. Technically, it's episode 12 of like podcasts we've done, but it's episode 10 of the main numbered one. We're like Final Fantasy that way.
Oh,
Um,
don't compare us to Final Fantasy. You had Polly,
I
come
did that on
on.
purpose. I did that on purpose.
Why'd you do
Yeah,
that?
if you don't know us, I am Polly Mune. I am an RPG enthusiast, joined with my best friend,
That
KJ.
that's me.
And we do a monthly podcast episode where it's kind of like a book club where we play an RPG game off stream together at the same time. And we end up reviewing it on stream after beating it together off stream. Generally, KJ beats it before me. He has won this round again.
I was gonna say it's when
I've
Polly
done it
wins.
once.
When Polly does it, it's more of an exception. It's definitely not the rule.
I would have, to be fair, I would have done it for Star Ocean episode. What did we do Star Ocean for? Episode
It
6?
was a while ago. I
Yeah,
don't even know,
I think it
6,
was
7,
episode
something like that.
6, something like that. And I think episode 6 was like, I could have, but I got distracted by a mini game for a very long time. So, yeah, so like I get credit for like 1.5. That's what we
Yeah,
get.
it's as Eno said, it's not a race. We're going through, but I will say it's one of those things where I personally like finishing the game first because I love to just like get your brain dumps and just be like, "Yep." Either think like you're so right or oh man, you are so wrong and this is going to be so good. Like there were so many points of this game where I'm just sitting there like, oh, when Polly gets here, this is gonna absolutely she's gonna be in outraged, or she's gonna be like so distraught, like this is gonna destroy her. And I'm just like, I can't wait to see the extreme
The
emotion
cap
and just be like,
locks.
yep, at least you have somebody to talk to about this. Because I just barreled through head first and was like, wow, now I'm just wallowing in whatever feeling this is.
This is true, and like my Discord teases me about Caplocks Polly, and Caplocks Polly happens a lot in these podcast games to
Oh,
KJ in
you
private.
have you guys have no idea. Polly is like living. We have a section of the Discord where we talk about like the game and everything. The game notes section is pretty much me spoiler tagging things and then Polly living in caps lock. That is the interactions. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and
it's always a good time.
we have a great time with this, and I'm glad that we started this. This is super fun.
Oh yeah.
It gives us a reason, an extra reason. I mean, KJ always has a reason to play games, but like an extra incentive, even just for me, because I could get so busy and not play anything but the stream game. So this is great because now I play a game off stream too with KJ, and it's so funny to see each other's reactions. And then like if KJ's ahead of me, I will go back once I get to that point and like read his like spoiler tagged messages, and I'm like, oh my goodness, and then all cap locks and stuff, and we have just a
Pretty much.
blast with this. And honestly, this time around again, having that group discussion on your Discord where
Mhm.
we were all talking, and like Dark was playing the game and P-Stone was playing the game, and we were all like mentioning different parts and stuff like that and having conversations. I definitely really love that, and this is why we do this and why we announce it all the time, is so that you guys could also partake and be playing the game off stream, and then um uh beating it around the same time as us so we could all talk about it together. So yeah, I absolutely love this. I don't have a physical copy of the game. I think you do.
Yeah,
Um
I will flex the steelbook as well because the steelbook is absolutely beautiful.
Cries in Canadian.
I'm sorry. I'm
Cries in
sorry. The
Canadian.
steelbook,
Square Enix, why?
yo, it even has the character art on the inside. Oh, it's so cool. I'm sorry. I have to flex the steelbook. It's
Oh, it's beautiful. One of these days, I'll grab it. Probably in the USA at PAX. I was
yeah,
shocked I didn't
maybe.
see any of them there, because I was looking, but I
They're
didn't
only
see.
they're like exclusive to a certain store. I'll
Oh, okay.
go look. I'll try to go sometime and I'll look and see if I can get you one.
Yeah, and so I have to talk about this a little bit because I actually got, I got sponsored to play Octopath Traveler 2. So Square Enix gave me a key for the game, which was great, because, I was able to get it right away and, play it right away. So thank you, Square Enix, for giving me the key because, that helped with this, and now we get to do a big review of this game, as part of that, and I really really appreciate it because that definitely came. But now after going through it stuff, I'm like, I want that steel book, and this is also a call. It's like, please think of your Canadians, give us a store where these steel books. I don't care who's selling it. Just give me a store in Canada that I can buy these steel books from, and so I can have these cool collector stuff because I love collecting steel books.
So it's funny that you bring up Square. So I kind of want to start with this, and we're about to get super derailed. So this
Okay,
game was
so
devved.
yeah.
I was gonna say, so Octopath Traveler 2 was devved by Square Business Division 11 and a company called Acquire. And Acquire's done a couple of different things. They did, like, I believe, the Way of the Samurai games, and they did Octopath Traveler 1, some other stuff. And
Did they
here's
do
where we're about to
triangle
be
strategy?
derailed. So everybody hold on to your chairs or whatever you're sitting in or whatever.
Got it. I got my chair.
This this is the best game that Square Enix, outside of remasters, has ever devved or published. I'll just put that out there right now. I specifically said Square Enix, and I'm excluding remasters because I know since the merger, they've remastered things like Chrono Trigger, they've remastered things like Final Fantasy 7 through 9, etc. Outside of remasters, this is the best game that Square has devved or published. And I'll take whatever criticisms and attacks that may be, but like I said what I said, and I will stand on that hill very very proudly.
I am going to wait until the end to reveal if I agree with you or not. That way people have to watch this whole podcast to hear if Polly agrees with
Oh,
KJ
I
or
love it. I
disagrees
love it. Yeah,
strongly. I
I'm
love
gonna.
that we're starting with this.
I said
I
I was
love.
gonna give y'all a very controversial statement, and I said what I said. I I am I am willing
We are here
to.
for the hot takes and tangents. This is a part of it, right? It's coming up with our own opinions of said game and then reviewing it together and seeing A if we match, A if we disagree, and or A if we match, B if we disagree, or C if chat agrees or disagrees.
True. And so I will say
And
I
or
had to like.
our listeners too. I should say also our listeners. Thank you for anybody who's listening to us on like Spotify and stuff like that. We really appreciate it
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
if the numbers tank for this, it's totally because I just said something absolutely ridiculous, and people are like, "That is nonsense," and they just turn everything off.
Isn't that what
Um,
you have to do on YouTube? This episode has to go on YouTube now. You know that, right?
Pretty much,
And it
yeah.
has to be your hot take right at the start, the caption.
Yeah, we
That's
can definitely do that. We can
okay, let's
definitely.
do that. Awesome, because I'm
That
actually getting the
works.
volume this time. Uh,
Um, but yeah, so I guess I'll. I kind of. I'm trying to think about where I want to start because again, this game was just. This game was very good. I think they and I will say I actually looked at a list of all of the post merger games
to
just
see if there
to
was one.
just to make sure, just to make sure. I looked at all the post merger games and I was like, okay, I can
Because you
I can
did say
comp.
post merger, because I was thinking like, really? Valkyrie profile, all
That's why I
these
said.
things.
Well, that's why I said Square Enix.
Yeah,
I
that yeah. The
specifically said
post
Square
merger,
Enix
yeah.
because it's post merger. Anything that came out after, I think it's like April of 2003. Uh,
Yes, I think so. I think you're right.
So yeah, I'm gonna stand on that hill. So I thought Octopath 2 or Octopath 1 was a masterpiece, right? Like I thought it was a fantastic game. It had its flaws. Like Octopath 1, there were definitely people can talk about how the characters didn't interact much. The stories weren't really the stories were kind of locked behind optional content, like, or the stories coming together were locked behind optional content.
There it is. Yep.
Um, and those were some of the big criticisms of Octopath 1.
Yes.
Octopath 2 changed that whole thing. They rewrote the script. Like, you have characters interacting in battle, you have characters interacting outside of battle, you have co-op chapters where characters are working together to like figure out certain things, and then all of it kind of comes together. Um so yeah, overall I feel like they definitely they heard the complaints, right? I think
Yes.
they
Which
did.
is huge. Which is huge because a lot of companies don't these days.
Yeah. So I will give them I will give them their I will definitely give them their kudos there. Um I think one of the things that I did realize was they tweaked the difficulty a little bit. I think this game was a lot, I don't want to say a lot easier, but it was significantly easier than the first game
Mhm.
because of some of the
Mhm.
mechanics they added. Specifically, like, they gave some extra skills for each
Mhm.
main class. So like when your character, you start out, so I probably should have started with like giving sort of the premise, right? Octopath Traveler, you have 8 characters, they all have their own separate stories, and you play each of the stories. They're split up into different chapters, they have recommended levels, stuff like that, and you kind of can go through the stories at whatever pace and whatever order that you want, as long as you've done the previous chapter of the character before.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, they basically made it a bit easier because they added like a passive skill, or passive skills for people. They added skills that people can actually use in battle, and they also added more like a sort of like a special almost,
Yeah.
where after a certain amount of time you can fill a gauge and then use that special. So I
Yeah,
don't know
they
about
made
how.
improvements to the battle system, which also made things slightly easier because of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so
Um
I'm not sure, did you feel the same, Polly? Did you feel like it was easier?
Yeah, so Octopath, so we both played the first game. KJ played all the optional stuff as well, for Octopath 1, which he was talking about how the stories don't really connect until you do
Mhm.
optional stuff. I didn't do that portion. So I did all the character quests. I did it on stream. I streamed all of that. I did all the way up to chapter 4. They had chapter 4 for that particular game. And so I did all of those. And I actually found going through this game, I didn't, okay. So originally, I didn't know if it was because I played the first one. I found this one a little bit more like I already knew the combat system. I already knew some of the stuff. Like they introduced new things, but I had already had played and kind of knew like, if like the order of the weapons, they kept that the same of when you're breaking an enemy or
Mhm.
and that sort of stuff. They kept they kept the order the same. And so things like that, I was like, okay, maybe this is why I found it a little bit easier. But now hearing your explanation, I do think because of the added skills and their combat ability and how much they can benefit the fight, I think it is easier, at least for it is easier than the first game in some of them. Like I remember wiping several times to some of the bosses in the first game.
Mhm.
I think it was a couple of the chapter 3s even, and then a couple of the chapter 4s I remember struggling with. Yeah, I do agree with that. Now hearing that, I'm like, I think it's more that than the fact that I had the experience of playing the first one.
And I do think
Um,
the experience of the first one matters, but yeah, like
Yeah, it makes it a little bit easier at the start of the game.
Mhm. I
For
think
sure, because you can remember the weapon order, you can remember so it's like, "Oh, if I break him with a pole arm and there's nothing ahead of it, I know it has to be like an axe or a bow or something magic," like things like that, right? So little bits and pieces that they kept similarly from the first one that you could remember, and then even just knowing that you do the chapters in order of each character, like you can't do a character's chapter 3 until you do their chapter 2 sort of idea, because it doesn't unlock, right? So things like that you do, that does make things a little bit like easier to kind of jump into the game a little bit faster, but
Mhm.
they do a really good job this time explaining it too. Like
Yeah.
I like the little tutorials. Like I skipped them, obviously, but they came up
Same.
they came up with like
Same.
little tutorials and stuff like that for everything. So like even somebody who hadn't played the first one, like as long as they're not skipping it,
Mhm.
they
Yeah,
come up with
I
little things of explaining it.
before the secret boss in this game, I game overed in one area, and it was and honestly, so I was living very dangerously. Like, I would go into areas that were like 10 or 15 levels higher than me and do fights.
And
Um,
be able to
and be
survive.
fine because
Yeah.
I was very comfortable with the battle system, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, so Hikari's final chapter, I wiped twice because I underestimated the or was it twice? I think it was twice. I underestimated one of the fights because it's like a boss rush. I underestimated one of the fights, and the other one just I wasn't expecting, and I was still I think I was in a state of like I'm like 50 hours into this game and I've been able to just walk everything, and I got cocky. I got very cocky and that chapter humbled me. But after that, like yeah, the only other times that I wiped in that game were against the secret boss. And eventually that took me like I mean, I was at that secret boss from like 10 p.m. until like I don't know,
We could get into the
7 a.m.
details of those a little
Oh,
later
yeah,
because
yeah,
those will
yeah.
be spoilers and stuff. But
Definitely. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm not gonna talk about the details. I was just saying,
I can't
like,
wait to tell you where I wiped because it's not where you did.
interesting. That's funny.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
this is
really
gonna be
funny.
fun. 'Cause, so we try to purposely also keep some stuff back. So we'll talk about, like, the plot and things like that, but we also try to keep some things so that we're both finding out at the same time as chat for these podcasts or
Mhm.
as our listeners. And so, just to kinda keep things a little fresh. So I did wipe once, besides the Ed boss, and it was not a it was not Hikari's.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm super excited to dive into this. Okay. Yeah, so now that KJ's talked about his hot take and talked a little bit about the mechanics, um, let's talk a little bit about the art style and the music. Um,
So yeah, I'm down, of course.
yeah, so I
Um,
think the art style is taking what they did in Octopath 1 and, like, taking it over.
mhm.
There are some improvements, and there's some new mechanics based on those improvements, like, you could do boat travel. You could get in a
The
little
boat.
boat and,
The
like
boat was so cool. Sorry.
yeah, so you could get into, like, little boats and, like, find secret areas, but you can also get, like, an actual ship, which is cool. So, like, they improved some of the mechanics that way to kinda tie into the art style shifts of, like basically, they wanted to keep it looking like Octopath, right? So there was only so much more improvement they could do to the art style. So I like that they expanded your ability to explore in this game because it kind of
Mhm.
let you see the water more, let you see things that you didn't get to really see a whole lot of in the first game, which made it feel like there was an upgrade in the art,
I
which I
totally
thought was
agree.
which is really, really cool. And I thought that was genius on their part. That way they don't lose the style and the feel of the game because that is something that a lot of people, including myself, and I believe including KJ, we loved about the first game is
Oh
that
yeah.
it was this beautiful blend of pixel art, but also three-dimensional, and they did such a great job of blending the two that it's become something that other people are trying to reference with their games because it's like so revolutionary kind of for like that upgrade to of sprite work, like taking that new step into sprite work where it still looks like beautiful pixel art, but it's three-dimensional. There's, depth to the world now and stuff. So they didn't lose that charm. So anybody who played the first game, they absolutely didn't lose it. In fact, they gave you more areas, more ways to explore, which makes it more like expansive with the art, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, it definitely the world felt, it did feel like you could explore more because you're like you said, it was the case where when you're just like traveling on a path and you would see like a random bridge that would like, or steps that would go down to the water, and you could go in and actually like travel down to specific areas. And the way that the camera, the way that the way that everything was set up, it very much felt like an older like retro RPG where it's like you kind of just have to go up against a wall and hope that you find a secret entrance. Like there were multiple places just like that where it was like, oh, there's actually a place here and I can just like keep going, and that's an entrance to a cave. And honestly, it was funny because I actually missed, there was
Love
like
that.
a level 16 cave that I missed. And it was because I 100%ed the game because I was like, that's just what I do with these games. I love the Octopath games. And there was one thing that I was missing, and I had to look it up, and it was like, oh, I didn't like go and push up against this one wall that was really an entrance to a cave. And I was like level 90 fighting level 16 bosses, and it felt silly, but like
But you're
it
like, I
was really
must get this
interesting.
treasure in here. I must know.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was something for like one of the like extra classes or something, like it was something. And so I had to pick that up. But yeah, I completely agree. And I think they did, not only did they do like the boat travel with the smaller boat, but they also then had like the larger boat that you could travel around the world. And it was funny because Polly found that before I did. And
I
I
did. I
DM'd
just
her
couldn't
and I was like,
afford it.
yo, Polly, I got something super dope. And I was like, have you done this? And she's like, no, I'm broke. I couldn't afford it. And my response back was just sending the I'm on a boat by Lonely Island.
I was
I was
so
like,
jealous because I found that part of the game before he did. But I was broke and I couldn't buy the shit.
and the reason why she was broke is actually like when we start talking about sort of why like
Mechanics and
our
stuff. Yeah.
paths
Yeah.
in the game, it'll kind of make sense as to why she was broke and I was just like sitting on money because of the specific characters that we chose. So
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And it's funny because it's like you could end up like Polly or you can end up like KJ depending on who you chose as your main character.
pretty much,
And I
pretty
think that's
much.
great. And so like yeah, so I stumbled across that and I was like, so adding that allowed you to start seeing more of the ocean,
Mhm.
and how well they did the water effects and how they did all of that. Another thing they added to improve the art style and also just add to the game was a day and night sequence,
Yes.
which is really cool because it also allowed them to think of how do I look at these scenery at night? How do I look at the scenery during the day? And kind of like play around with the texture or the pixel art and everything for it, and like the water reflection and stuff like that, whether it's a moon or a sun that you're seeing reflect. And it's just so cool to like look at all the art that they had now upgraded because they had this day and night system that at first I was like, okay, is it going to be like one of those clocks where it's like it'll eventually? And yes, it does do that,
Mhm.
but you can manually switch it whenever you want, which I think was genius because I would just find myself like walking through like an area or on the boat in the water, and then I would switch it to daytime and then switch it to nighttime just to see what it looked like. Cause I was like, this is just really
Interesting.
cool. Cause I was just so admiring all the art and like the just the in depth that this team went to like thinking about like how shadows and stuff are cast versus the sun versus the moon. And I just, oh, it's just so cool. Like I
That's
kept flipping it day and night just to see the difference.
that is the artist in you coming out because
Yeah, I think I'm like the artist nerd of me is coming out, and where I'm just like stare at a game, and I think this is why my idle time is like matches your playtime because I'm standing there just looking at scenery and
oh
just like
my
looking at the
goodness.
textures. I realize now that's probably why I had an extra 10 hours, and
That's
that we
so
ended up
wild.
beating the game at the same time, even though you did more content than I did. So like,
I It's
I
funny
think
that you
that's
say
funny.
that because one of the other things, they did not just add the day night cycle because it looked cool. They actually gave skills based on
Yes.
day and night. So, like some characters, you'd get like EXP boosts if they were in the party at nighttime. So, while you were like, took your artist approach, I took my very, very much like engineer, logical, like analytic way of thinking. And I was just like, oh, I can abuse this. So I would change the cycle depending on who was in my party. I would change the cycle to make sure I'm fully utilizing the battle mechanic for the day and night cycle. So that was another reason why I was just like, I would do all the fights because I was like, I'm getting extra experience.
Yeah.
I would,
Yeah. And
I noticed the cool things like with the day night change, but for me, abusing the day night mechanic was way more about making sure I'm taking advantage of the things that they gave us and optimizing.
the funny thing is like when you think of day and night sequences in games when people when things do that, sometimes they either just have the day and night there and it's not really relevant. Sometimes they have it where certain quests can unlock
Mm-hmm.
and stuff during those day and night. But I love how Octopath Traveler 2 did it. Like you said, they also built their mechanics based on it.
Yeah.
So
Even
you got
characters.
certain abilities and certain things in battle, and certain characters could do certain things during the day, and certain characters could do certain things during the night. And then also, even your battle mechanics could change. And so it meant more why it was day versus night than in pretty well most games I've ever played.
Mm-hmm.
And they still did have like a couple like quests and stuff like that where you had to be nighttime to see something happen, or you had to be daytime to see something
It was
happen.
actually more than it was more than a few. It was a lot. There were a lot
Okay,
of
so
side
you did
quests.
all the side quests. I did a couple of
Yeah.
them where like that there was like a
They
haunted mansion, and I did that quest line. And
they built a
so
ton of stuff into that. Like there was this one, and again, these are like small side quests, but there was this one where there were two different trials going on, and you had to like find different equipment or like different items for evidence for the trials based on the day or the night. Like it was really cool. Like they
yeah.
really put emphasis in this day and night cycle.
And they
They
built it in where it just didn't feel like it was just an additional like, "Oh, it's here." They
Mhm.
really thought about how they were gonna implement the system and make it a big part of the game,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. Like, I found myself switching day and night just to see because it would even take the NPCs, and certain ones would be available at night and certain ones would be available during the day, but sometimes not both. And so like I would go around a town switching day and night to see who I could interact with and see what I could, take from them, or see what I could like bring them into my party or things like that where you get like the additional higher effect. And there's just so many things in every town where they really thought about this day and night sequence. They said, "Hey, we want to really build this into the game." And it was entirely built not only for style, but it was entirely built into the mechanics of the game, which made it so in-depth and cool where I can't think of a game that does that as well.
Yeah.
Like
No,
to
I
that
totally
extent
agree.
to that extent, which is like, again, you Octopath Traveler was already something incredibly unique. Taking it in Octopath Traveler 2 and then making it even more unique was like, I did not expect that at all. Cause I was like, like what I couldn't think of when I first played the game, besides some like, quality of life upgrades and stuff like that. I couldn't think of where they could like make it even better. And like with that day and night sequence, made it even better.
Yeah,
Like,
and I will one more thing to add on because I don't think I think both of us forgot to mention this per se, but on top of the NPCs switching, it was also the case that the character actions would switch. So in Octopath
yes,
Traveler 1, everyone had their own character action. So like the thief could
which is
steal,
cool.
the warrior could challenge people to battles,
And learn their
the
moves, yeah.
cleric could guide people, the dancer could like basically seduce people into following.
The scholar could, like, interrogate
Yes,
almost,
the
like
scholar could interrogate the merchant could buy things. They were basically like opposite. So it was like merchant could buy where thief could steal. You have the guide versus allure. You have the challenge versus like, I guess the challenge and the
Provoke.
hunter one are kind of the same, right?
They
Like
they they're very similar.
those
Just
two were
yeah,
basically the same. And then you have like the inquire versus the scrutinize, uh, where like it was one of those things where it was really really interesting to kind of see, like with Octopath 1 it was interesting to see, oh, in battle the games, they each class had their own thing, like had their own sort of unique thing to them, like because you could also have people have subclasses, but everybody who's their main class, they have a specific set of, they have a specific skill, right?
yeah, which is
And it
cool.
was really cool to see them incorporate the out of battle skills into the day night cycle. So it was like an
You got
example
two
would be,
sets, which is
yeah, so an
great.
example would be like the thief, who is actually who I ended up starting with, Throne. She can steal during the day or knock somebody out during the night. And so they had all of these different things. So it basically set up a whole nother level of like a whole nother layer of interactions that you could do to do side quests and to do optional stuff. So it was really cool.
Yeah, and so you went from having, like, 8 or 8 people that you could recruit, and then to having 16 different special moves that they could do. So like in day and night, depending on. So it's like it was really, really cool because you could do like where you can like scrutinize with the scholar or you could mug them at night. And like beat them up and steal their stuff where you're
Yep.
like, what? And so like so you went from having like 8 special skills outside of battle to 16,
And they were still
depending on
opposites,
day or
right?
night.
So like Polly
And there
said,
was still
there.
the opposites, and there was still, like, they really made it so that you could really just run around with the 4 people that you really liked.
For
And
the most part,
so
yeah.
for the most part, and where they had a lot of the opposites, and you could balance your team based on, like, that too, where you can have, like, the dancer where she could just get items, or based on her level, or you have the thief who could steal the items based on their level, and, like, gives you a percentage. So if they're a higher level, then they have a higher percentage of stealing that item. And so like you could be like, okay, do I want the dancer or the thief in my party?
Mhm.
Because they essentially do the same passive ability.
Which, by the
But
way,
they
if you tell me you picked the dancer over the thief in
oh
Octopath
god,
2, I'm gonna be
no, 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 no.
that's gonna hurt me.
I'm saying other people
I'm
can,
gonna
but I
I
think
was
we
gonna say
both
I am
agree
going to
on
have, that is going to be like a personal, that's a personal attack on me. If you pick the dancer over the thief in your party, that is a personal attack, and I will be reaching out.
Yeah, no, I saying that for the viewers and the listeners because I'm sure there are people out there who like the idol storyline. But so you have these things, and then in battle, it was also something like that as well. So you had your 8 characters had different abilities, and of course they left some of them the same. Like the scholar could figure out one of the enemy weakness at the start of battle, but things where like if you were battling at night, things like I think it was Temenos the cleric who had it where if you were battling at night he did status effects to the enemies or something like
Yeah,
that,
I
or
think that was
yeah,
his. Yep.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So like, so you had like this way to like customize your party kind of the way you wanted, as well as still having these characters have these unique things, even if they did double up. My unfortunate thing is I tend to like the characters that all doubled up. So like I had them all in the party at the same thing, and I was
Wait,
like,
who was
okay,
what was your
well,
party? We can at least.
yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the characters. So
Yes.
we have the 8 characters like in Octopath Traveler 1, but just in case you haven't played Octopath Traveler 1, I'm going to try to like explain it as if you haven't played the first game. So more or less you have 8 different characters that you have access to make into your party. You have to pick one of them as like your main person. So it generally is your first quest that you do, or your first chapter that you do is this character. So you have the options of a cleric, an apothecary who is kind of like a hard hitter slash healer slash status effect remover, kind of a buffer character. Cleric is just, typical in most games where they're a healer, and or has a few spells that can damage
Mhm.
enemies that are light based. You have a thief that you could choose, that can steal and stuff like that. You have a dancer who can buff your party, or attack with like daggers and stuff like that. But I mean, and it has a wit. I guess it has a magic. They have a magic move too.
Yeah, in the
Um,
first one they had different magic, but they do have magic as well.
yeah, they switched around some of the magic and the stuff from the first game,
I'm kind of
but they
glad they
have
did.
magic again. You have a scholar who is basically your mage.
Yep.
You have a warrior who, I mean, is your
Self-explanatory.
attacker. Yeah. Hunter, who is also like an attacker, but can also use animals to attack for them. And this game, they did it a little bit differently, where you got to pick your hunter's companion. So I thought this was really cool. So with the hunter, they have an animal companion. They had that in the first game, and now they have this in the second game. This time, though, you got to choose which one. So either they would break the enemy based on an elemental move,
Yeah.
or they would break the enemy based on a physical move. And you get to
Oh,
pick that, which was
wait,
oh, you
really?
missed that? You missed that? Yeah, the jackal. So you had the choice between the jackal dog kind of thing and
Yeah, and the
the
bird.
owl. The owl could break an enemy based on elemental, and the jackal could break an enemy based on weapon attack.
Interesting. I did not know. I mean, I either I knew and forgot or I just didn't realize, but I ended up going with the owl because I was like, the owl's cooler. But that would make sense. Like on the hunter class, I guess it sort of makes sense to do that anyway, because they're not really gonna necessarily have magic immediately or anything like that. So,
Exactly, and that's actually why I went with the owl myself personally. I liked both of them, but I went with the owl personally because it could break magic, and I remembered from the first game, the hunter not really getting too many magic moves, even with, the, animals you could capture.
although
So
they
I was
definitely
just
changed that, I think.
yeah,
Hunter
they
was way less
improved it,
limited.
made the hunter a little bit more useful in this game. So you have the hunter, and then
Useful.
you have a merchant, again, who could like hire people to battle for them, as well as a few other like moves. They could like collect money from they could collect money from like battles and boss battles, which was hilarious, and a mechanic I definitely exploited when I realized you could steal from bosses. I didn't think you could like collect money from bosses, so I didn't try until KJ's like, "Oh yeah, I collected money from this boss," and I was able to afford the boat, and I was like,
I mean, that's not why I was able to afford. I was
well,
able to.
I
Okay,
mean, you were also because of your main character you
I was gonna say
chose.
I chose the thief, and like in these
He
games,
picked the thief, I picked the apothecary,
yeah,
um,
and in
because I
these
thought her
games,
story would be more interesting. It turns out all of I won't even go we haven't started the
yeah,
story yet,
seriously,
but
and it's just so easy to steal things when you can just like when your main character is over leveled. So it was like I was going into every town and I could steal everything from everybody. So it was like I just stole everything and then sold it all. And I was like, wow, like this is incredible. I didn't buy equipment until like the second to last chapter for most characters because I was able to just
you
take.
just steal it all and
Yeah,
everything,
it
yeah,
was great.
and see, I was torn about picking the thief because I had played the first game, and in the first game, they had this mechanic where they took it out the second game, and I'm so freaking happy they took it out. They had a mechanic where you could only open certain chests in the world if you had the thief in your party. and I was very close to picking the thief because I thought they might do that again.
Mhm.
And so I was like borderlining picking them until KJ came into my chat and said, "Oh, I picked the thief as my character because KJ started before I did." And so I said, "Oh, I don't want to pick the same one as him because I wanted something different." So I ended up going with a character on the other side of the map
Mhm.
because where you could see people's first chapters, like four of them were on one continent and four, like three of them were on the other, and one was on like one of the like eastern southern continent, right. So you had like, so KJ started on the eastern side continent, and so I decided to go with the western, somebody on the western, and the apothecary was immediately the one I was interested in, so I picked them. But they took out the mechanic of the game, which is makes this quality of life so much better, that you don't have to have, like, there are no chests in the map that you can't open. So like you could go around and open any of them, even the special looking ones. You don't need a thief in your party anymore, which I think, I get what they were trying to do with that, but it made it where you had to backtrack a lot in the first game if you didn't happen to have the thief in your party. And
Mhm.
for me in the first game, I wasn't really vibing with the thief at all. I didn't really
Same.
like his storyline. I didn't really like him as a character. And so I never really wanted to play with him, but I felt forced to play with him because there was so many chests I was missing out on in the game. They took that mechanic out, and I think it was incredibly smart because it allowed you to have more control over who you were going to have as your main character and not be already at a disadvantage, except for money. Except for money, because I will say having either the thief or the merchant as your first choice in this game means you will get more money. You'll have more money or more equipment easier
Yeah.
at the start.
I was gonna say not
Um,
necessarily money because the
my poor
merchant
broke
buys.
apothecary, who ironically their story is also them, like, not taking money and just going around and helping people.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I'm like living the broke dream. I was very broke for a while
Yep.
in the game and not being able to afford my equipment, but that's fine. But it was still something like you want to go around and collect all 8 characters anyway. You want to do everybody's chapter 1, get everybody in your party, and then go from there of who's your favorite and whose
Mhm.
story you're most interested in. I think that's the best approach to these games because it allows you to kind of experience everybody and then go, okay, whose mechanics do I like? Whose story do I like? And that. So like you go around, you collect everybody. And then once I, started using the merchant and the thief a little bit more. Suddenly I was like stealing stuff and getting money for bosses and stuff, and then I was okay after that. Um, but yeah, so you start off with those like 8. You could pick which one you want. He went with thief, who was Throne. I went with apothecary, who was Casty. And yeah, that's kind of how you start it,
Mhm.
and everything is broken up into chapters, and so each story is a chapter. One, they did something really different right at the start, which I thought was really interesting, but it also made it where KJ and I basically left the same character to the end of our first chapters, is
Effectively.
because one of the characters, the scholar Oswald, you have to do 2 chapters. So you do chapter 1 and 2. You cannot stop in the middle and go do somebody else's.
And it's just
You have
because
to
of
do
his
chapter 1
story.
and 2. But it's because of story.
Mhm.
There is a reason, it's connected to his storyline, because right at the start you read the description that he's in prison. And
Mhm.
so that is why. So we both left him to the end because we wanted to do everybody's chapter 1, and then his was going to be a two-parter anyway. So we left him to do his two-parter and
And
then kind of carry on from there.
it's really interesting how they set up the chapters because so everybody does have 5 chapters, but it is the case that like there's branching things. So they actually allow you to say like, oh, if you have to go to A and B, this is all chapter 2, right? But then the person's final chapter might end up just being a chapter 4. So I thought it was really cool how they did that because it was like everybody still got the same amount of chapters and um the level curve was still similar like for everybody's chapters, but it was the case that like if you went in saying, "Okay, I'm going to do every chapter 1, then every chapter 2, then every chapter 3 like that." it would be the case where you would actually end up finishing some people's stories before you even unlock the final chapter of some of the other people. Um, and yeah, I think one of the other interesting things that they did was, even after you get all the characters, like, you at that point you know how all of their specials work and everything, but they also added what they called EX skills. Now,
Yes,
one of the EX skills you unlock later in the game for everybody, but one of them you go around finding different altars to actually unlock the skill. So what you do
which is
is
really
you have to have the person in the party, you find their altar, and then they get granted this skill. And I thought that was something that was really cool. And they did something similar with the class system too, where, like, in the first game you have optional classes and everybody could only be set to one, right? So I started with Ophelia in the first game, who was the cleric, and if I wanted to make her a thief, I could make her a thief, but then none of my other characters could
be a
be a thief as their secondary class. In this game, what they did was they made it like a job board license system type thing, where you found the different guilds or whatever that could give out the licenses, and you basically go there, you get one for free, and then there's some task or something that you have to do. So some of them, it's the case where you have to, like, for the merchant, you just have to give them a bunch of money. Like, you basically buy the licenses, right? But with, say, the warrior, you might have to do some other thing where you have to, like, fight a certain number of characters, like, fight a certain number of battles. And then another one would have been like, oh, you have to get these certain items and through some random quest lines, some random optional dungeons. So they really kind of opened it up to say, like, to allow you to basically say, oh, if you want to make Throne and Casti, uh say, clerics, you can, but you just have to make sure you have the licenses unlocked. And so there were 3 for everything outside of the secret classes, which you can only add one person to. And it follows a very, like, the same patterns as Octopath 1, where, like, you get skill points and job points and all that stuff, and you can kind of use those to unlock different skills. So it definitely sort of built on the original Octopath 1, but each character had their own sort of skills, and some of them were, like, the skills individually are passive, but the EX skills are actually abilities that you're using in battle that are taking up, like, some of your mana and stuff like that. And I will say I definitely abused some of those EX
yeah,
skills. Like, some
yeah.
of those EX skills were absolutely incredible.
It made for pushing again the exploration, which I thought the first one also did too, because they had, and Meech made a really great statement in chat. KJ was meaning altars, as in like you found shrines,
Yeah, like
basically,
like altars.
of
You
the
would
of
basically, like, pray at an altar. Like,
exactly,
yeah,
which they kinda took that mechanic a little bit from the first game, and then they adjusted it why you were going to those spots instead. And so, it made it for, like, map exploration, but it also made it for town exploration and stuff like that too, because a lot of the licenses and stuff, sometimes we're in towns, sometimes we're
yeah.
near towns, and so it made you explore more and, like, kind of explore each of the maps a little bit more and try to take paths and stuff like that when you looked at it and go, oh, if I go left, I'm going to go to the town. But if I go south, weird, there's this weird indicator on the map. Let's go see what that is. And so sometimes you'd find optional dungeons. Sometimes you would find the shrines, aka the altars. Sometimes you would find the licenses and stuff like that. So it really made for map exploration in a sense that you when you got to that area, you could see on the map kind of, okay, the town is over here, but there's these weird symbols elsewhere. And so
Mhm.
you kind of like tried to figure out how to get to that symbol. And some of them like were like behind a waterfall, like things like that, where it was like it offered a little bit more exploration, but also made it so that it wasn't like impossible to find things unless you
So you
just like
you know why those showed up, right?
I actually don't. What?
Okay, so those shrines showed up. So if you found the guild and talked to the guild, they would tell you, they would give you like
Oh, they
hints.
tell you. Oh, I didn't
Yeah, they
know
give you
that.
hints
Okay.
to where the different shrines are. So I didn't realize, I only ended up finding one guild before I found the shrines. I found all the shrines and then found the guilds. Um and so yeah, as you talk to them, there's like three different options. One of them is like just a general conversation. I think one of them is how to get the other licenses, and then one of them's how to find the shrine. So if you talk to
Oh,
them,
okay. Okay, that's
it
why those
basically
showed
like
up.
triggers the, yeah. So it
Okay, that's kinda cool. So there you go. Like, it gave you a reason to, like, to find the licenses and explore the towns a little
exactly.
bit because a lot of the times they were around there or in and around the town,
Yeah.
and then they would help you find the shrines, and then you find those, and then you could find, like, the extra EX skills and stuff like that later on. So, like, they really wanted you to explore even more in this game, especially giving you the boat at some point in one of in the merchant's pathway is where you can unlock the boat. So like there's so many mechanics and stuff like that in this game. And then of course with like the battles and stuff like that, they did it like the first one where when you were in a boss fight, the pixel of the boss was massive compared to your tiny little
Mhm.
sprites, which really I think is really such a cool mechanic because it really emphasizes of like your enemies were always bigger than you, but like, relatively decent sized. But then the bosses were generally like massive. And you got to see this crazy detailed pixel art of every one of the bosses. And whether they optional bosses or the chapter bosses. And I think that was really, really cool because they took that mechanic from the first game. But
Mhm.
in this game, they even had some of the bosses where they switched like positions. So like they might be looking at you with like a sword and they're like about to attack you and then they swap the position. One I can think of right away is one of Hikari's quest lines.
I
Is
think they
that
did that in the first one too.
did they do that? Cuz I
I
I
think
remember they do
so.
it a couple times but like not as frequently as this game.
Yeah,
It's
they
like they
definitely,
took that from the first game and then they were like let's do this more often.
this game definitely had a lot more of like the stance changes. And
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
with
Yeah,
those
they
stance
did different
changes,
stance changes. They also did different like different kind of forms and stuff, which
yeah, it would flip
they
the
did in the
weaknesses
first
too.
game, but just not as many,
Yep.
which I
Yeah, they
thought was
definitely
really
pushed
really
that
cool.
more. But
They
it
pushed
was
it
there,
more,
but
and I think it's because they already had a game that was tried and true. People
mhm.
loved it. It did well. So they were able to bring in more people, expand the team, expand the game. So like it definitely felt like now they had more people to like assist and so they could do a lot of the extras or the more extra stuff like that where it's like it doesn't really take it away if it doesn't, but it's
Mhm.
cool when you're playing it and you go, "Oh, okay, that's cool." Like it's something where you're like, "Okay, this is adding a thing." This would not have been a negative if they didn't do it.
Yeah.
But it was cool that they thought about it and they're like, "Hey, we want to expand on this a little bit more." Um but yeah, so we've talked about the mechanics, we talked about the characters. Let's talk before we jump into the storylines and talking more, maybe getting into the spoilery stuff. I wanna know, did you run into any glitches in this game at all?
Nope.
Like any parts where you had something freeze or glitch or stutter or
The game
frame rate or
the game crashed on me one time, but it was, I attribute that to Switch hardware, not the game.
okay. Because I
Did
did
you?
remember you mentioning it crashed, but I thought it was more of like a Switch issue than
Yeah, it was definitely Switch hardware. It wasn't like, I didn't run into any like frame rate issues. I played this game docked and undocked. Like I didn't have any problems. But I did run into a crash once.
okay.
I'm trying to remember where. I think it was in the snow area.
So I have a theory, and I think this game might be getting towards the end of being able to be on the Switch.
You're
so
probably right.
yeah, so I think so my theory of this is like I didn't have any issues. or glitches in it or of any kind. I didn't end up having a crash or anything like that myself. But I definitely felt like this game was pushing the limits of the Switch in terms of like just how expansive it was over the first one, just
Okay.
how like more stuff you could do, more things. And I'm not surprised it might have had it, but I agree with you that I think it's getting towards the end of the being able to be on the Switch. Like
Mhm.
thinking about it, if they would do a third game, if they tried to expand it even further, I don't know if the Switch would be able to they might have to do it in two different carts or something like that. Like I don't know. I feel like they're getting towards it because it is like I know it's pixels and stuff like that, but it's still
Mhm.
a lot of like VFX work. It's still a lot of post processing. It's still a lot of like with the day and night shift even as well. Like that is still stuff that's going to be like heavy on it, and it is the Unreal Engine as well, which was
Yeah.
mind blowing to me because when I went to school, I learned how to use the Unreal Engine. And I want to say this, and I hope my teachers hear this podcast at some point. They told me it would never be possible to do like pixel sort of stuff with the Unreal Engine. You have to do the hyper realistic. That's what the Unreal Engine is for. If you want to do like cutesy stuff or hand textures or stuff like that, go to Unity, yada, yada. And now we're looking at the Unreal Engine and we're looking at Octopath as being on that, but utilizing it so well. One, it's crazy how well the engine has come all these years, but also
Mhm.
two, it's just like, you told me this would never be possible, you liars,
I
kind of
mean,
thing.
and
So,
I'd be really interested to see like how the game played on the PS5 because the game is out on the PS5 as well. So I'd be really interested to see how it played on the PS5 in comparison. But everything that I heard, like I know, definitely had a friend that was playing on the PS5 and they had no problem. But I think everybody else is playing on the Switch. So I don't know.
yeah, and
I think that actually you're right. I think we are at the point where if they came
Switch
out with a third game
specifically, PS5's
anytime,
fine. PS5, it's got a long way to go before I think it'll be an issue on that
but on
console.
the Switch, I think it would
But this
definitely be.
I think we're getting towards the end of this game being on the
Mhm.
Switch unless there's a significant upgrade to the Switch itself.
Yeah,
And so because I didn't have any issues, but the few people I've heard say there was an issue or two have all been on the Switch. I
yeah,
haven't heard anything on the PlayStation 5 at all. And I haven't heard really anything. I think it's on Steam too.
it is on Steam. Yep,
Yeah, yeah. So, I haven't heard really anything about that one, that version either. So, yeah. So it was one of those things where it's like, one, I'm just mind blown that it's on the Unreal Engine and how much that engine has come along. And me trying to do like particle effects and pixel style way back, like freaking, oh god, how long ago was I in school? 14 years,
why would
15
you?
years, something like
Don't
that.
even.
I don't know, a long
Why
time
would you
ago.
put numbers
Anyway.
out there?
Listen, like I was trying to do cool shit like that and seeing like them be able to do that with this engine and just like be able to build it to what they want is just incredible. But yeah, I think it's getting to with how much they added to this game. Holy crap. Like I keep thinking as we're talking, more stuff to say that they've added and expanded on this Octopath Traveler universe that they literally like they've put so much on it. And so I think, yeah, I think it might be pushing towards the end of the Switch life cycle unless people are playing, I mean, like unless they do like a new Switch console or something like that. But PS5, yeah, I don't see it having any issue on that for a while.
Yeah, definitely not.
But
Um,
uh
yeah. So other than that, yeah, I don't think I didn't have any glitches or any frame rate issues. One thing that I wanted to talk about was just like the entire sort of like sound profile of the game. It's from
oh,
OST to voice acting. Like I think it definitely. I mean, the voice acting was pretty good. Like I thought the voice acting was good. I thought
yeah.
the fact that they had not only the main characters but even some of like, well, I guess this is kind of a spoiler because I don't want to they had the main characters and side-ish characters voice acted. And I say
Yeah.
side-ish for a specific reason, but I'm not. I think you know what I'm alluding to,
Yeah,
but
yeah, 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 yeah.
I'm not going to say anything. But yeah, so they voice acted quite a lot of characters, and yeah, it was very 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 solid. Like having all those characters, and if you didn't want the voice acting, you didn't have to because they also added like a fast forward feature. And with the fast forward feature, it was the
Oh,
case
it was
where
handy.
you could either like autoplay and have the voice acting, you could or you could have it fast forward where it just went through and just had the dialogue. So I thought it was really cool that I was able to kind of just pick and choose. And so when there were stories I didn't care about, which I only actually didn't care about one of the stories, it allowed me to just play through all the dialogue fast and get through it. But then when I was in a story that I did care about, I could hear the voice acting and hear everything. And I thought that was fantastic. And in terms of the music, like, I mean, it's
Oh,
Octopath. The music was, I would say, the music in this game was equally as good as the music in the first game. I think they're both very good. The music
yeah.
is just, it very much encapsulates the environment, and I think it's just
With one
solid.
particular track. Holding Supreme for Polly is the one I've okay, don't give me that attitude, all right? I love that smooth jazz, okay? That saxophone hits hard. And the track I'm talking about is Partitio's theme
Mhm.
that played a lot through his chapters. And or anytime there was like where they like the party was like pumped up and determined to follow through with their goals. That song was also played, but it was a track that I was just like I fell in love with it instantly, and I would just like sit there and listen to it and not advance the story just so that I could listen to it. But
Oh
yeah,
my
I
goodness.
would also agree that the OST is fantastic. I would say yeah, it's like they did great in Octopath Traveler 2 with the OST. Octopath Traveler 2 also hits hard with the OST. Like there's some really great tracks, and they really set the mood well with their music. But one thing that I feel like I love that Octopath does that a lot of other games might not do is they have a lot of support sound effects that work really really well,
Mhm.
like where the character like puts out their arm and you hear as if their like clothes is shuffling against their body, and it like you hear that, or where when they head nod it like it sounds like their like clothes are like moving and stuff like that. So like there's a lot of little subtle sound effects that they took from the first game and they put it in the second game, and they added some extra like little bits in there that really tie you into like it really pulls you into the game more. Because I hear some arguments of people being like, "Oh, it's a sprite-based game. I'm not going to get into this because it's not realistic or whatever." And I get that there's a whole like mantra of people who won't like play anything that isn't hyper realistic. But one thing I thought Octopath does that's like pulls you in more than some of the sprite-based games or even of other companies and stuff like that doing the pixels or even the more hand painted texture stuff is that they really use the sound effects to like also pull you in more,
Mhm.
which I thought was really, really cool. Like every time like the character would like head nod, it would make a noise, or they would like shuffle their hand out of their pocket and like put it out to grab an item, or like they have all these like little tiny like sound effects and stuff like that, which I thought was really cool. That added with the music and added with the voice acting, and they had more voice acting in this game.
Oh
So
yeah.
a lot of the game, at least with the like the main plot points and stuff like that, a lot of that is voice acted. Like you said, there's side-ish characters that also have voices, and I thought was like I thought a lot of the voices suited the characters more this time around. Like like Ochette was a more bubbly kind of character being like, "I like meat," and like being more like high energy and stuff like that. And they had a great voice actress for her for that. They had like Oswald who was like, you know, in prison and tortured and had like not tortured, but like I mean, well, kind of.
Tortured is the right word. You
That's a
chose
good
your
word.
words
Okay, never mind.
properly,
We're gonna like,
Polly.
yeah, which isn't a spoiler because I mean that's right at the start. You like that
Yeah.
really, you literally read it. He like right at the start, you read different characters' profiles. His
Yeah.
was that he was in prison for murdering his wife and daughter. And then you kind of go through that storyline. But yeah, so his voice, okay, his voice actor is the same voice actor who plays Sino in Genshin Impact. And hearing the differences in the voice was incredible to me, still recognizing it was the same voice actor. And that, like, in Sino in Genshin Impact, he's a proper, he's kind of like a guard. He's like the head of the guard kind of thing with the mantra and stuff. And he's very like, you know, I am going to do this thing kind of thing. And he's very like prim and proper. Oswald is very scuffy,
Like
very like
gravelly almost.
gruffy, growly voice. And like, he's like, ah, this is Harvey, and like stuff like that. So he's very like gruffy and growly. Yes, I had to throw the name in there. And it's like night and day with the voice actor. He did incredible to pull these two different, very different characters off and be able to. I was like, okay, that's his voice. But I'm like, he's done a really good job at doing that. So like Throne's voice was really good. She had more of like the smoother voice that like Primrose kind of had in the first one. But I felt like when she had to put in a motion to like give that like seed of like, oh my god, I'm having this thing happen, it came out really well too. So I feel like all the voice actors and actresses, like Particio, oh my god, I found like I kept trying to talk like Particio.
Oh no.
I kept like trying to talk to him, and I keep teasing KJ because KJ wears a lot of fedoras on his channel, that he needs to get a white one with a little yellow brim so that it's for Particio, because that's what Particio wears.
Holly's trying to make me stop doing these.
But yeah, so all the characters' voices and stuff like that tied in. So like when you have the music, you have the sound effects, and you have the voices, it all pulls you in. Like all of it was just, it came together really well, this one. Whereas I found in the first one there's a few disconnects in a few areas. Generally the voices and the sound effects and stuff like that. But I mean, they've improved it in this one, I feel. And yeah, definitely brought me in more. um,
For the
but
record,
yeah.
I recognize zero voice actors or voice actresses. I specifically asked this question so Polly could go off on a rant. Like, I specifically was like, okay, we're gonna talk about the VA, and like Polly will have her.
Literally wrote to KJ in capital letters that it's my boy Sino, because Sino is one of my favorite characters in Genshin right now. And I was like, I recognized him instantly just because I've like heard, like, I really like hearing that voice, so I could
And
hear him.
I was just
But
like, I don't know.
he hasn't played Genshin, so I was the one going on a tangent about these voice actors and actresses. He's like, sure. But
Okay,
yes,
so I have
all
switching
right.
switching gears. I have 4 questions for you, and they're going to go. They're all regarding like character, story, gameplay, whatever. Um, and
Okay. Do you
I'm
want
gonna.
to? Do we want to say that it's spoiler now, or do we
No, no,
want to
no, no,
wait?
no. This
Okay.
is it's more so like the first 2 are specifically just like your more so like what you did and like game preference. Okay, so the first one, I'm curious. What do you remember the order you collected the characters in?
Yes. I think I can remember this right off the top of my head. So I
Okay.
had Casti.
Yep.
Um, I I went and got, so I had Casti. I got Particio, the
Okay.
merchant. I got Agnia, the dancer. I got
Oh.
Then I got Hikari. So
Okay.
Hikari was the last on that segment.
Mhm.
And then I went over to the Eastern Province and I got Oshet.
Mhm.
Then I got Throne, then I got Temenos, then I got Oswald. So Oswald was the
Gotcha.
last.
Okay, so I started with Throne. I went up to get Temenos. I made sure I checked on Oswald, saw that I had to do the chapter 2s, then went down and I got Ochet, then Casti, then Hikari, then Particio, then Agnia, then I got Oswald. Okay. I was just curious, like, and so the reason I asked that was because what was your main party? I'm curious, like, if the
Oh,
order that
that's
you
right, we
chose.
didn't talk about who our main party was at all throughout that is something that we left kinda secret, didn't we?
True. Yeah, I had
Yeah,
no idea who your main party was. I mean, I posted
so
mine in Discord, but
yeah, for me, I started out with a party for a little while up until,
Mhm.
like, chapter 3, and then I changed them over.
Interesting. Okay.
And I think it's because I started, like, bonding with certain characters a little bit more, so I
Mhm.
swapped them in and out. So, like, my main party right at the, like, start that I really liked is because I really, really liked Particio. So I had Casti, Particio, Hikari, and Ochette. So
Interesting.
that
Okay.
was, like, my main party, and it was kind of destructive because Ochette and Hikari were, like, crazy damage dealers for me.
Mhm.
So, I was just like Particio was just kinda like he was getting me money. Like, I will be real with that one. He was getting me money. I liked him as a character. I was a broke Polly wanting to buy a boat, and I needed the money. And then I found I started to switch around a little bit, and I think my end party, except for the end boss, which we'll talk about that a little later because I
Mhm.
restructured things a little bit. My end party was Casti. I actually kept Casti in the party because I kept using her as a buffer.
Interesting.
So with her concoctions and stuff like that with her stuff, I could raise the BP level of everybody.
Yep.
I could raise all their attack power.
Mhm.
I could make them heal SP after every turn, and
Mhm.
then I can make it hit all characters and I could strengthen it. So that was like one of my go-to moves all the time with Casti,
Oh yeah,
where
that's the strat.
everybody had their battle points
That's
back.
the
Everybody
strat.
was like buffed. Everybody was like gaining SP after every turn because Oswald, oh my god, kept stealing everything. So then when I got Oswald and I was using him more, I had Casti, I had Oswald. I had Hikari or Ochette because I never needed both of them at the same
Mhm.
party. So I would switch them back and forth, whichever one I wanted to use, and or if I was doing a chapter quest with one of them. And then the fourth member actually ended up being either Throne. I used Throne sometimes
Okay.
and Temenos sometimes when I needed the double
Interesting.
healer.
Okay. My
Temenos was kinda nice because he had the like, I would put, like, Oswald as cleric and Temenos, both of them could do Sacred Shield, so they
Oh,
could,
okay.
like, cut the attack so then they don't get so that even though they're both kinda squishy,
Mhm.
I made it so that they would, like, cut the attack by half if I knew a big attack was coming. So, like but I also really liked Throne, and I liked using her as, like, a sabotager. So, like, I would, like, lower their attack, lower their
Oh, you did
defense.
that. You took That's so interesting. Throne
Yeah.
was so different for me. Wow.
Alright, so who is your, like, main party? And
My party throughout the entire game was Throne, Oswald, Hikari, Casti. The entire game. Like those four, because I used Casti the same way. I would it was BP up, it was BP up, uh SP up or SP heal to everybody. Actually, it was 2 BP up, SP heal,
yes, because you did the
strengthen,
strengthening,
and
right? So
party.
you got the 2 up.
And
Oh,
I
I
just had
love that.
free turn. Like, and then what I would do is I would so end game, Hikari has an ability that is pretty fucking broken because that
Yes.
shield, like I was doing the same thing. I was using the protection shield, but I just had Oswald as cleric. And I was using that for a while, and then I found that there's a because Hikari can learn skills
Yes.
based on when he after he like battles somebody. There's a skill where he can grant invincibility. So
Oh, I heard there's a move.
I
I never got
started
that move.
what I
I
started
never
doing
got
was
that
I
move.
started maxing I started I think I had Casti as backup dancer, and I think the dancer ability allows one of your skills to apply to everybody. So I would max out Hikari, cast that, so I had 4 turns of invincibility, and then go ham.
Oh my
And
goodness. You
so, yeah, I
that
was
was like you spamming Invincible Moon in Final Fantasy 8, or
that's
like when you
basically
got
I
Invincible
was
Moon in like multiple turns in a row.
yeah,
Oh my god,
so
that's
I
awesome. I
kinda
never got that ability, so I
I
never
kind
used
of
that
broke the
that.
game with that, and that was actually really clutch. Um, but it worked out because I think that's only available like after you get some of the later chapters, and I beat Hikari's story first before I even beat Throne's story. So I had that, and I was basically like, when I got that, I was able to kind of just like walk some of the stuff. Like it wasn't even a challenge, and yeah, everybody like it's funny now because in my final save, Chet's actually my highest level character because just because of like how my grinding worked out, and also because of the fact that like some of the monsters that you can capture with her are actually super broken. Like some of the extra like
Yeah, they are. Oh my goodness.
I
There
don't
was
even know
some
if
of
you
them
got
like,
there's the best place to train in the game has a monster. It's actually a boss from the first game. It is a boss from the first game
oh, oh,
that you can
okay.
capture, and
Oh, I
it
didn't get that one, I don't think.
it hits like 6 times for 10,000 damage. Or like it breaks if you break the damage limit, it hits 6 times for over the damage limit.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So
Yeah, I
that was
never got
super
that one.
broken.
I thought Oshet was broken already, and now you're telling me that, and I'm like, "Oh, I never got that, but
So
I never got that
I was
enemy."
able to use that and some other monsters that she had to that's how I ended up like beating some of the like more hard fights. But yeah, and the thing about that monster that you can capture is you can't capture it as a boss, I don't think, but then it has a percentage chance to show up as an encounter in that area. So
Oh,
you
okay,
can
so
then
maybe I
so
was it like an optional dungeon? So maybe I fought it, I just didn't know
it
it
is an
came as an
optional dungeon. Yeah, so there's one okay, so slight spoilers because we're
But yeah,
talking
I
about
wanna know
the
which dungeon this is because I wanna know if I did it or not.
there
Because
is
I
a
did a bunch of
dungeon
optional dungeons, but
there is a dungeon you can only get to if you have to guide somebody like force somebody to like allure them or whatever, and have them you have to have seven people in your party, and then you go to this area, a bridge collapses, leaving you with a ladder to go down, and that's the best place to train in the game.
oh, I
And
never found that. Probably because I never had, like I kept forgetting to allure and hire people.
yeah,
I
you
like
have to like yeah.
these broken mechanics in this game that would have made things easier for me. I kept forgetting to do that. Except for Partitio, I had somebody in the party that made it so I collect more money from
Yeah,
enemies.
but that's like one of the that's the biggest training area, and if you go to the area without enough people, it just looks like a bridge. But if you go there with all of the people, it
It breaks the
collapses.
bri Oh, okay, cool, that's cool. See, now I wanna go back and, like, find these things and stuff like that. You're
Mhm.
making me wanna do more.
So
Well, I've already told KJ that I was gonna go do the stuff in Octopath 1, which is gonna be a little bit hard going backwards, but,
it's gonna be
and
honestly,
then
honestly, if you play two first, playing the optional stuff of one is gonna be a pain. Or if you've played two at all. Like the optional stuff
yeah.
in one, you end you end Octopath 1 at a certain level, and then you kind of have to grind out like 20, 25 levels to get to a point where you're gonna be able to do the secret boss.
In
And
Octopath Traveler 2, they do a much better job at giving you ways to grind and level up that are it's easier to grind and level up in 2 over 1.
there's honestly, I don't know if you found it, but there's actually one way that's really broken.
Yeah, so, like so he was telling me about, like, one of these things that he could one of these guys that he could, like, do and, like, attack or have in your party or something like that where you get, like, more experience and stuff. So, it's one of these things where it's like, this is why and this is one of the main reasons why I say if you want if you want the bit of like the things that connect to the second game from the first game. If you want to know that, please play the first game before the second game, just because it's going to be really painful for me to go backwards now, because they do a lot of quality of life upgrades
Mhm.
in the second game versus the first game. Even like there's so many things that they've improved that going back to the first one is going to be a little rough for me, even just on the characters alone, because I love the characters so freaking much in the all but one in the second game, and everything. So that's what I told KJ, that I do still want to like go back to the first one and do it. But I'm also like partly thinking I might watch the thing in the first one and then just do it in the second one,
Yeah,
because I like.
just watch it, and then I can fill in any gaps for you. That's the
Yeah, and
best.
so,
It's
like, because
honestly
I'm
the
to a
way.
point where I'm just like, I love this game so much, and now hearing there's even more things that I could go and find and stuff like that from KJ's, because KJ 100% of the game,
Mhm,
and so I did all the chapter quests, I did the final boss and stuff like that. I did some of the side quests.
mhm.
I think I might have done maybe about half of them. I
There's about
found all secret
70.
classes.
I think there's 70 or 75 side quests. I have a spreadsheet.
Yeah,
I have a
I
spreadsheet
think
with
I did
all of it.
around 30 of them.
Yeah, I have a spreadsheet with all of it because I
It's like
was
I
I
did
was
the haunted
tracking.
mansion, there was, like, the haunted, like, the weird creepy mansion that there was no music in. Okay, that freaked me out. So it was
Oh,
like,
that was.
it was just sound. So you go
Yep.
into this building and it's just like the music cuts and you're like, "Okay." And then you just hear creaking boards, and they're trying to set it up to be, like, spooky, and I was like, "Okay, this is actually kinda cool and freaky at the same time." But there's a quest line that you could do, one of the side quests pulls you to there,
Yep.
and stuff like that. So, yeah, so I did some like but I didn't 100% it myself. But do we want to start talking about the spoilery stuff?
Um,
Or do you have more questions
I have
and
more questions, but it's gonna step into spoiler. So, who's your favorite
okay.
character? I'll just ask.
Okay, so this one's hard to pick one.
Gotta pick one. I'm putting you on the spot where
KJ's doing it to me again. If
no
anybody's
honorable
like following
mentions.
our podcast and stuff, KJ
No
KJ does
honorable
not like
mentions. We need favorite character. No.
favorite character. It's funny because I'm wearing ears right now. She's not actually the favorite. She's up there though. I would say, favorite character for me was both based on their storyline,
Okay.
being super like super attached to it, super into it, and then also just like them as a character, them as a mechanic character. I think it's gonna be Casty for me.
Okay. And Cassie's
Um,
the apothecary for anybody that
yeah,
is
Casty
is
is the
following along but
apothecary. Her
doesn't know.
whole storyline was holy shit. And then for me, and again, it happened again because in Octopath Traveler 1, everybody told me to pick Primrose. And then
Primrose was
Primrose's
so good.
storyline ended up being my favorite. And then this one, I was like, I picked Casty, and Casty ended up being my favorite. So I don't know if it's like, but their storylines were both so good.
Mhm.
And I liked Cassie as a character. I liked her gameplay mechanics very much. I liked the improvements that they did with the apothecary. And I just like her, like, she's just wanting to help people. And she's kind of like the mom of the group. So she keeps like Ochette in line. And like there's a scene, there's a couple scenes and stuff like that where Oswald mistakes her for his wife. And like there's
Mhm.
some little funny mechanics and stuff like that with that. So she starts trying to act like his wife. And like, so she has like the humorous side and she has like the playful side, but she's also like, okay, like I want to help people. I want to make sure everybody's there. And she's like, she just wants to be there for everybody and be there to support them and carry them through every one of their things. And she's so uplifting to every, like all of like, so they did the same in the first game and second game where you could do banter. so travel,
Mhm.
but they did more of it in this game, I found, and
And it was
more of
more
it where it was like,
like applied to the stories as well.
yeah, and they applied to the stories, and the characters talk to each other in battle, which is great. It doesn't matter who your battle party is, they'll like
Mhm.
support each other. So like you'll break an enemy and Hikari will be like, oh, great job, Casti. And like like they're talking to each other. So it feels very connected this time around, where it
Mhm.
felt very disconnected before. And so even all the travel banter and stuff like that that you could do throughout the game, there's more of it, and it's relevant to what's currently going on or where you're situated. It's so sometimes when you go in a bar, travel banter will come up because they're all drinking at the bar, stuff like that. So yeah, with Casti's, everything that I kept uncovering with Casti, both her story, how she talked to other characters going through what they were going through, and how she supported them. I was like, she's my favorite, absolute
Okay.
favorite. I loved everything about her. And like there was other characters I also loved, but she was the package for me. Like
Was
I always
your
had her in my party. She was level like 69 by the end of the game.
was her story your favorite too, then you would say?
I think hers I think hers was one of my favorites. I can really argue, ooh, cuz like her story was really really good,
Mhm.
but I could almost argue there was one slightly better.
Okay. 'Cause that was gonna be my
Um
next question. My next question was gonna be, what was your favorite story? So, I was
yeah.
curious, like, what story
So
would you say was better?
honestly, and this is going to be a wild card.
No, it's not. I'm ready for it.
I actually and I didn't funny thing is I didn't
Mhm.
even think I would like this character
I know. I
at
know
the
what you're gonna
very
say.
start. It's Temenos.
Yep, I knew it.
I
I knew it.
I like Temenos is basically Sherlock Holmes, and I was freaking out the entire time when I saw the reference where they were going with him.
Mhm.
And his story ended up being very slightly better for me than Casti's. And it also, I found like even like the end sequence and stuff where it was starting to connect and stuff tied in a little bit more.
Mhm.
Whereas Casti's like, and this is a little bit of spoiler, I'm just gonna warn people right now. Casti's like the main person, like towards the end that she like kind of goes after. I was kind of like,
Yeah, her
so
final
like I found I was like more pulled and I think yeah, I was like I was heart pulled in both of those stories,
Okay.
but I think Tamino's has ended up being just slightly more interesting to me, and I think it was a lot of how they set him up as a character. And right away, I will admit it, I was not a Tamanos fan, and I told KJ that. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this guy. I really, really don't know how I'm gonna like progress with this character because I was on the fence with him and I wasn't a huge fan of the dancer. So I was
Mhm.
like, those were like the two. And then I did Temenos' chapter 2 and I was like, oh no. I love Temenos. And then
It's
I got like
funny.
pulled through after that.
It's so
So
funny because
but
I think I agree with you. I think Temenos had the best story. I think Temenos had the best story, but it was not my favorite. My favorite story was Hikari's story. And that's because like I will always love a like I mean, I'll always love a good like, oh my goodness, you were betrayed by these people, time to get revenge type story. I will always love the sort of like redemption, like I'm coming back to do this, like do what's right and stuff like I really enjoyed Temenos' or Hikari's story. Like I thought Hikari had my favorite story, even though I will say like
I was gonna say it was gonna be either Hikari's or Throne's for you, but I think Hikari had a little bit more of the getting like get
it
basically taking
pulled
his
me
kingdom
more.
back
It
and
pulled
like
me in more. Like
yeah.
I think Hikari's story definitely pulled me in more. Whereas I think, like I said, Temenos had the best story in terms of consistency and in terms of there weren't any ups and downs. Like for me, I didn't really care too much about Ochet's story. I didn't really care too much about I didn't care at all about Agnia's story. Throne's story and Casty's story I loved, but they both kind of fell off towards the end for me. And then like Temenos' story, it was for me. It was between Temenos. And Oswald's story, I think was also
Oh,
good.
yeah,
But
yeah, that's true. Like, I would argue, like, for me, yeah, I think story-wise, I think Temenos and Oswald, were close. I think I liked Temenos' a tiny little bit more because I kind of predicted the twistedness of Oswald's.
yeah, Oswald, it was very odd. I think it was that's what I didn't like as much, as that it was very obvious. But yeah, I think my favorite story was definitely Hikari's. I won't get into too many spoilers, but even going through to tie everything in, like I thought it was just great. My favorite
Yeah.
character was Throne, though.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I started
See,
with
so you
Throne.
had a similar thing to me where, like, we had our favorite character, but we
Mhm.
had our favorite story, and it was different.
I'm so glad I started with Throne. Like I, even though again
You
her,
were so rich by the
well, that too, like that was great. I had well over a mil in my entire time playing this game, like well over 1 million gold. But the biggest thing for me was I really enjoyed her, like, as a character and her inner dialogue, her monologue, like all of that stuff. Like she would go off and you would like they did a good job of having each of the characters kind of talk through their thoughts and stuff like that. And I thought it was great. Like hers was just so powerful because of where she was coming from in her story and how she was sort of like a thief, but not by choice. Like she ended up being sort of taken in. And so it was one of these things where it was like, oh, this is why this is the case. And again, like the sort of plot twisty stuff that they did, I wasn't the biggest fan of. Like I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. And I saw how it tied into the stories later on and stuff. But in terms of just her as a character and how she interacted with the other characters and just like how she
Her
processed
and
things and moved
Temenos as a
forward.
pair was
Oh
very
my, it was
interesting.
great.
Like, it was great. Like, they played off each other
Yeah,
so
they
well, and
did.
they're both sarcastic. So,
Yep.
like, they were, like, being so sarcastic that I was like, "Okay, this is fun."
Yeah.
Like,
I thought that was a
so
cool dynamic.
yeah, and this is a bit spoilerly, so we're gonna start talking about spoiler topics and stuff like that because I think the next questions and stuff we're gonna start connecting a little bit more into spoilery stuff.
Mhm.
So one thing that they added with this game, which I thought was brilliant, was that they added not only that you have chapter quests, but you have co-op chapter quests where two characters kind of go off and do their thing together.
Mhm.
And they paired up some of the most unlikely pairings that I would think of, but then they worked really well.
Yeah.
Um, I think the only one where I found it fell a little bit short was the Particio and Oswald. Um,
Really?
but at the same time, I could see why those 2 because, like, Particio is, like, trying to, like, the better the world, that's his whole kind of, like, storyline, and Oswald is the scholar, so he has all these connections to scholars and yada, yada, because that's what he
Mhm.
was and or is, and so I kinda saw it or whatever, and it connecting and everything towards the end, but for me, like, it was funny because they paired up certain characters together that I didn't expect, and then I said, "Oh, this is great," and that Throne and Temenos was a great example of that.
Mhm.
I was like, "Who are they gonna?" 'Cause, like, when I unlocked the first one I unlocked was Casti and Ochette, and
Oh.
I kinda got it because I was like, right away, I saw them how they talked to each other in battle and it's some travel banter because I had Ochette in the party.
Mhm.
I was like, "Okay, they're gonna do, like, a mom and daughter sorta thing." Like, I knew right away. Like,
See,
I knew what that was gonna be.
I got Temenos Throne first. So
Did you really? So when
yeah, because Throne was my main
I kept
character.
thinking, "Who is Temenos gonna be with?" And I thought,
Mhm.
"Oh, Temenos is gonna be with Oswald." That's what I thought. And then I was like, "Who is Throne gonna be with?" And I kinda laughed, and I had this funny picture of Throne and Agnia together.
Oh no, that would have been awful.
It would have been awful, but it would also been like, can we make Agnia more more like maybe her like side co-op-y thing I would be interested. But no, they put Throne and Tamanos together
Mhm.
and their story also being connected into the over connecting main story. I was like, holy shit. Like, I was, like, on the edge of my seat wanting to unlock that next chapter
Yeah,
after I finished the
same.
first one, because I was like, "These 2 work so well together," and Temenos was very not the typical cleric. So, Ophelia in the first game was very typical cleric, like, soft-spoken, wants to
Mhm.
do good, guide people. Temenos was like, "May the light protect you, I guess. I don't know. What am I
Yeah, he
supposed
was
to say?"
doubting. He
He
was
was
very
like
much doubting every like, he wasn't, because I think a lot of times when you think of a cleric, you think they have, like, sort of this religious, like, strong religious ties and stuff like strong ties to their religion or their faith or whatever. Temenos was just like, "Meh, this might
Yeah,
be
I
bullshit."
know. He's like he was very much like, "I don't know," and he was also
Yeah.
like, "I need to challenge everything, and I need to
Yep.
challenge these beliefs, and I need to challenge these directions." He was also very sarcastic. So, he's just like, "Oh, very good. That's like, you did great today." And it's like, are you are you being sarcastic?" It's like, "Oh, so you caught on." Like, he was very, he's just such a well-built character that him pairing with Throne, who is also like she's gone through some shit. And like you hear her storyline and everything, and and her storyline is very, very serious. And so her and Temenos paired together, where Temenos is trying to like kind of be sassy, and she's like sassy right back, that I'm like,
Mhm.
she's just giving the punches right back. And then he's like, "Oh," and he like looks at her as like a worthy opponent kind of kind of
Almost,
scenario.
yeah, I can see
And
that.
then it just ends up blending so well together that I was like, I freaking love these two together. Like, I would play a whole game with just these two.
Yeah, they were a solid pair.
Like, if they make DLC where, like, I could be like Temenos and Throne going off on
Don't
an
wish that.
adventure,
No,
I'd
please
be
don't wish
so
that on us.
down for that.
Don't add DLC to Octopath.
No,
Please
I'm
no.
teasing. I'm teasing, obviously.
Just make the game
This game
complete.
doesn't
That's
need
all I want.
anything else. It's great. But yeah, give us an give us an anime. Give us an anime of Temenos. No. But yeah, they did a really, really great job. And like I warmed up to Temenos really quickly, and then doing that was great. And I unfortunately I wasn't super into Hikari and Agnia's.
Because it wasn't good. That's why, like, anything that
It felt
Agnew
like
touches
anything
isn't good.
connected to Agnia just wasn't my jam. And I'm gonna
Yeah,
say
it's
this
just not
right
good.
out to like our listeners and stuff. I know there's Agnia fans. Agnia is the I'm gonna be an idol trope type that anime and some games will have. And that does it for people. And that's great. Like her storyline is entirely the idol storyline. She's just a sweetheart, and that's her whole kind of thing. And if you like those kind of stories, you're going to love Agnia. My
It was
thing
just
is I'm not super big on idol anime. I'm not like I know I watch magical girl anime and stuff like that, and I've said that a lot on the channel, but like idol anime is a different thing where like they're kind of more or less singing and dancing and going through like, going from zero to like hero basically, but like in a singing and dancing kind of way. That's basically what Agnia's storyline is. And while that does it for some, and some people will really like her story, and that's great. It's like it's not a knock on that. That's just not mine and KJ's like
my
we're not into those kind of
my
storylines.
biggest thing was every other story just, like, stabs you in the heart. Like, almost every other
Yeah.
story, it was
Yeah.
like,
All of the
"Bro."
other ones were like almost an emotional roller coaster
Even
with
even Particio, his story was the lightest of them all, I'll say, other than Agnia. But, like, there was still some backstabbing and betrayal type shit that happened in his story too, and I was like, it just got you
and it
motivated.
motivated him to be who he is, where Agnia just seemed like she was good, wholehearted, needed nothing,
Yeah.
and there was no real like but there wasn't really a betrayal. There wasn't really any like extra except for this good wholehearted feeling. Even Ochet's story, which she was very trying to be upbeat, there was two
It was
groups of people
dark-ish.
fighting. It was like a little bit darker. She was trying to go and find these like mythical and then when you went to like those mythical creatures that she's trying to bring back to the village to save her village, you got some twisted shit that happened to those creatures
Mhm.
as well. And so like it built more onto her story that yeah, she was a good wholehearted person and just really sweet and adorable, but there was more to her than that. And Agnia, I felt like there was just not more to her than that. And there was like I was kept hoping that there was going to be a twist. I kept hoping that there was going to be something, and even her co-op with Hikari, and Hikari was such a more interesting character.
Mhm.
I felt her co-op with Hikari kind of brought Hikari down a little bit
That's
because
fair.
like
That's very fair. I
yeah,
can understand
it
that.
was like it was one of those things where it's like it was like they paired everybody out up together, and then they had Hikari and Agnia at the end, and they're like, okay, we're just gonna stick these together, and like stick these two together because they're the last two together, and we're gonna kind of do some wholehearted like positive thing, and so you're just kind of like okay, and it kind of dragged Hikari down a little bit for me. I'm not gonna
Mhm.
lie, because I wasn't super interested in it, and I found myself kind of fast forwarding through it, and it was a little like you got a little bit of character development ish for Hikari in that you didn't
Mhm.
really get any of Agnia.
Yeah,
Like she was just
Agnia.
kind of there and being like music, and you're just
Yeah.
like okay,
I thought
I'm
that they were
gonna
gonna take a different route.
dance.
I really thought when at the end of Agnia's chapter 2, I was like, "Oh, I'm excited." They're really taking a different route. They're gonna,
Yeah,
tie this into this person that her mother knew, and it's gonna be,
her
like.
chapter 2 was something interesting, and I was like,
Mhm.
"Okay." I didn't speed through it, I didn't do it like, I did that one, and I was like, "Okay, now I'm interested." And then chapter 3, I was like, "Oh, come on."
Chapter 3 was a huge letdown, and then
And
after
then
that, I
chapter
was like.
4, you're just like, "Oh." And
Yeah.
then chapter 5, you're like, "Oh."
Yep,
And
pretty much.
and then you just kept expecting more, and hoping because all the other stories were like that. And so I think her story would have been fine in a different game if it was like tied with everything else and that was like the shape of the story. But because her story kind of just stood out a little bit too much as being like the weakest link, that it was a little unfortunate because it was like literally one of the only negative things I could say about this game playing
It's
it
the only
is that
negative thing I can say about the game. If
yeah, it's like
if
the only
Agnia.
thing where I'm just like, I didn't like her as a character. I didn't really use her. She kind of saved my butt in the end fight, but again, when we start talking about that and the way I had it set up, there's a reason why. And so like, but otherwise, I was just kind of like, eh.
I feel
Like,
bad about that
everybody
end
else had
fight.
so much substance, and you're just like
Mhm.
you were on the edge of your seat being like even Partitio's, whose was a very lighthearted story, like, a lighthearted character, and Chet, who was a very, like, lighthearted character. They still managed to make their stories where you were, like, pulled. You were pulled in and everything. And Partitio, I will say right now, was it
Mhm.
Armand, or whatever? That guy? Fucking
Elrond,
love
yeah.
that. I love that guy. I love that he oh my god. Like I found I was super intrigued with Partitios. And then Partitio had like these side stories of like
Elrond,
sense
yeah.
of commerce. And that's how you get like the boat and stuff like that. So like doing those side things and getting a little bit more. And he's literally just going around trying to like help people out and lift them up and make the world a better place. But there's story behind that where he's like, he came from nothing. He got backstabbed. He got like his dad got really sick. Like things like this that like there was so much substance to his character to build up to it. Where Agnew was like, my mom was a dancer. I wanna be too. And like it started out with the first chapter where you're like, you thought the dad would be opposing and he caves like almost instantly. And then chapter 2, you start to get more interested. You're like, okay, they're shaping something up here. And then literally that's how I describe it. The best way I could describe it, it goes from chapter 2 to
Yeah. You're not
and
wrong.
again, she is a trope that some people will like. I just feel like in the overall of the story, they could have done something a little bit more with her.
She so, like, it was really interesting, and I'll get into a little bit of spoiler stuff because she does have one very important use, and that is she has a broken ability that you can use. It's wind damage, but it makes in the following turn, it makes the entire party move first. That
Oh, yeah, that mechanic was really
that
good.
is one thing that is very, very good. And honestly, it's the reason it ended up kind of being the reason I was able to beat the final boss. The not the
Oh,
final boss, the
interesting,
secret
okay.
boss. The final
Oh,
boss.
okay,
I
interesting.
feel I feel bad about the final boss because at that point I hadn't started grinding yet for the secret boss, but I was still so over leveled that like I don't even remember what I did to fight the final boss because it was so easy for me, unfortunately. Like I feel bad saying that, but like I was so OP at that point that it just
KJ was going around doing everything, doing side quests, doing stuff, so he ended up over leveled. And
I don't know,
then
I was over
Polly
leveled
comes
without the
into
side
this
quest
end
though.
boss under leveled by like 10 levels.
I didn't
And
the thing
3
was
characters who were not under leveled.
I
3.
didn't actually do all like I did the final so because there's a so again, this is massive spoilers, but there's like a final chapter, right? I
Which is
did
great. They did this better than in first one. The first one, it's put behind side stuff.
Mhm.
This one, it is it does follow the trajectory if you're doing doing all the character stories, which is I think is fantastic.
So what I did was I did the side quest. I didn't do the side quest. I did all of the stuff that I needed to do, and then I was like, okay, this is where the final boss is. I made a save, then I went to the final boss, beat the final boss, and then I was like, if I can't save after beating the final boss, then I'll reload, I'll grind, and I'll do all the side quests. But I was able to beat the final boss, and then you can save in between beating the final boss and the credits. So that's when I saved, and then I did everything else. Like I did all the side quests and everything. But yeah, I mean, I had done a lot of the side quests just going through the game, but like all of my characters were level 60 or 70 by the time I got to by the time I got to the final boss, and a lot of them were in the 70s. So like I just kind of like I said, I just kind of walked it. I will say one of the coolest things about the final boss was that they do make you use all 8 characters. So I was just like, "Oh, this is this
Which
works." Like I can
honestly,
just
one of the coolest mechanics in a game I have ever seen was the end boss sequence.
they
So
took that from the mobile game.
yeah, and,
They
like,
piloted that in the
they
mobile
they
game.
did it in the mobile, and then people, like, talked about how amazing that was, and that was such a good thing, and then they put it in Octopath Traveler too. So, yeah, we're still definitely in spoilers, we've been in spoilers for a while, so hopefully people have gotten that warning. But that end boss sequence, I told Edo, like, as soon as I did it, I felt so freaking good and powerful after I did that. I thought it was so freaking cool. And I set it up similarly kinda to Peace Stone, so I did it in 2 tries.
Okay.
I was horribly underleveled according to KJ, but, like, when I told him my levels, he's like, "What?" So,
Yeah,
I
you
didn't
were
have a character I had 3 characters over 60, the rest were, like, 50, maybe 51 going into that battle. So, Oh, Casti,
mhm.
Hikari, and Oswald were in their 60s, but, like, mid-60s, and
Okay.
then everybody else was 50 or 51.
That's so wild.
Yeah, everybody else was only 50 to 51, and
Wow.
so that was my, like, end sequence into that, and
That stresses me out.
the boss that I wiped on I was I was mad. I was mad
I'm
because it was a
curious.
boss that bullied me a little bit because I was a little underleveled and they just had too many turns in a row. And it was I believe it was oh, who did I wipe out? It was a fast boss. Now I can't remember whose chapter it was. It was either chapter 3 or 4 and it was a boss that was stupid fast and unfortunately just got like 4 attacks in a row and I didn't realize it and it wiped my party. Oh, now it's gonna bug
Interesting.
me. It was a really fast boss,
Fast boss.
and it was one of my underleveled people.
Was it Thrones chapter 4?
No, see, Thrones was even though it had the different forms, I was
Yeah.
okay with that one.
Okay.
I had no problem with
It wasn't
Thrones.
Ochet.
It's not
Definitely
Ochets.
wasn't Agnia's,
No.
because her chapters
Yeah,
were super
I wiped
easy.
on Agnia's because I just
Um,
never used her. I showed KJ as I was finishing people's like chapters 4s. I showed KJ my level for Agnia, and he's like, "You really need to level her up." She was
yeah, because
19.
you're like she has to
I
be a
was gonna
certain
like
level.
saw like I was gonna slip things, so I was like, okay, I will level her up. So
Yeah.
I had to do some grinding for her, but oh, whose boss was it? It wasn't Partitio's because I laughed really hard at Partitio's chapter 4. I literally was like, can I suplex this?
Oh my god.
Suplex it, but I never got to suplex it.
I'm trying to think.
Um, it was exciting.
Fast chapter 4 boss.
It was either a chapter. It might have been a chapter 3 boss though, too,
Was it
because again,
Temenos?
it was a
Temenos' chapter 3 was really high level.
maybe it was his because there was anyway. It was a boss that ended up hitting me like it was so fast, and then it ended up making. No, it was Casty's. It was Casty's because he kept doing elemental that stunted me, and
Chapter
then
3 or
he was
chapter 4?
fast. I think it was his 4, like her
Oh,
final one.
interesting.
It was her final one because he
Huh.
kept doing status elements to everybody, and then it made them slower, and then all of a sudden he had,
Oh,
like, 5 moves in a row. He wasn't strong, it was just he had that good RNG where he
okay.
had, like, made me really slow, and then he had 5 turns in a row and he wiped me, and then
Probably
I was
met
able
her
to win it.
RNG match in that fight.
Yeah, he had better RNG than I did,
That's
and so
wild.
because he just went, like, 5 turns in a row. So, yes, it was Casty's final because I remember the status
Okay.
effects too. And
Interesting.
hers was the only one that really did heavy status effects. And
Yeah,
because it's
I didn't
because they were
have
trying to get you to use the apothecary to like nullify it because she was
I didn't
lame.
have that issue with that one. But again, like at that point I had already done a few of the final chapter. Like Cassie's I think was like the third or fourth final chapter that I had done. So
Yeah, and see,
interesting.
Casty's was the very first one I did, and so I
Well,
think a few people were a little underleveled, except for Casty,
you
and
mentioned
then yeah,
you mentioned getting hit 4 times in a row. Um, that is a reoccurring theme. I'm gonna let you know. That is not something
cry,
that goes away. You are going
cry.
if you fight the secret boss, you are gonna experience that.
I'm
Um,
probably gonna rage.
oh, you're gonna rage. Like I said, it took me like 10 tries, but the problem is it's a two-part fight where you have to use it's a two-part fight where you have to use all the characters.
Oh, so it's
So
it's like the end boss again. It's
it's like
just
the no, it's not like the end boss, because the end boss, you had access to all 8 characters.
okay.
It's like it's like the secret boss in 1 where you set your 2 parties and then you go in.
Oh, so
So
when one wipes, the other one comes up?
no,
Oh,
no.
no,
When
okay.
you beat if you wipe, it's game over.
Okay, okay.
You beat the first phase and then
And then
there's a
it
second
swaps?
phase.
Oh, okay, okay,
And
okay.
you can't use the other characters from the first phase. So,
Oh, okay. So they changed up the mechanic to make it harder.
I mean, that's how it was in the first game too. So, they just
Okay, so I
carried
never did that sequence.
exactly.
So I don't have that to bounce off of.
Yep,
But
but
yeah,
yeah.
let's talk a little bit about that final boss
Oh, yeah, of course.
because so all the chapters and stuff like that, you see bits and pieces of a reoccurring stuff, but it's like it's subtle enough that you're like, okay, okay. But it keeps you interested and it all ties in together in a final chapter, which I think they should have done in the first game and not left it optional.
The problem
I
with the
think
so to just jump into that really quick.
because
The
you've done it, so yeah, yeah. Make that a
the
correct me if I'm
problem with the first game is that the way that they did this in the second game too, right? With the secret boss. But the problem with the first game, there's 3 the way that you I don't know if you remember any of this, is the way that you kind of get unlock the true path. There's 3 or 4 side quests that you have to do, and they're all regarding in Octopath 1. They're all regarding a kid and some random woman. and I don't know if any of these sort of ring a bell, but over the course of that, you have to do those side quests to then unlock the more like basically unravel more of the story and sort of figure out why it's plot relevant. And
Okay.
then after you do that, there's like a boss rush that you go through. And after you go through each boss, you get everybody's you they basically give you information after each boss in the boss rush as to why or how everybody's story ties together. And
Okay.
then you can fight the final boss, like the true final boss.
Okay. Okay.
So it would have
So
been really hard for them to do that in a way that made sense. Whereas in this game, as you know, like they were able to incorporate different people's stories in how they made it all work. Like you kind of got like you were alluding to, you got some of the exposure as to like, oh, this is happening here and this is happening here, and it's very similar. They have this like weird darkness theme, but they don't really tie on it or touch on it rather until that final chapter that you were talking about.
yeah, until those final chapters and those co-op chapters too. Some of the
Mhm.
co-op ones as well, tie into it as well. And see, I don't know, my experiences from one to the other, just listening to one, I think I kind of like how they did it in two better
Oh, it's definitely better.
because it keeps your interest in those other stories thinking, okay, there's more to this.
Yeah.
Okay, there's more to this. And then everything where you were left questioning in those stories gets tied together, which is fan fucking tastic, but also breaks your heart at the same freaking time because you're just like, come on. But like everything that was like a loose end, everything wraps. And so I thought that was a more cohesive way of doing it. And I know they tried two different things. So they tried what they did in the first one, and while like, still fantastic game, and that's the one you had to. Now that I've played the second one and I've gone through that,
Mhm.
looking at the two of them and hearing the rest of it, how it ties in and stuff for the first one, because I never got to the tie-in part. Because by the time I was done all the chapter fours, I was tired, and then there was just nothing left on the map that showed that I was doing anything because you had to kind of go and do your thing. Whereas this game, yeah, there was so much of it, and I'm sure it's like if I do all that stuff, it'll be, oh, I remember that from that, and that's how it ties in. But this one, it was a little bit more obvious that there was going to be something that ties everything together. And then they just also coordinated the characters where they were all like supporting each other, and their banter and stuff like that was a little
Mhm.
bit more. So I kind of like that they took their idea from one and they improved it. It just feels like that is the way I can explain this game the best, is that it took what they did in one
Mhm.
and they made it better, which I didn't think was going to be possible because I did really like one, even in the end. And I didn't do the secret stuff. I still like the game from where I left off, and I really enjoyed it. But like two, so like all the stories and stuff like that, they interconnect, which is really freaking cool. A lot of the stories punch you in the gut and make you cry. There's a few of them where they doesn't happen until maybe a little bit more where the big thing is revealed.
Mhm.
Um, there was a sequence, even they had such tiny details that alluded to things that now I'm thinking back being like, "Oh my god, that's a thing." When
Yeah.
Keystone brought it up to KJ and then brought it up to me, I noticed something was happening during like the final, like getting towards the final chapter, but I thought it was my Switch was glitching.
Yeah, that's
And I
wild.
told KJ this, which is really really cool. So this is a huge spoiler, but it's such a tiny little thing that connected. But for the end like sequence of Octopath Traveler 2, when you're in the final chapter, you are seeing like you were finding out that the lights of the sacred flames are going out. And in the corner of your screen for your loading, you could see those are going out as you progress. And it's
Mhm.
because they're happening in real time. And then you find out later the story of why those were going out. Like everything ties in. And you're just like, what? And I thought it was my Switch was glitching because I was
Mhm.
like, why is these things faded? Like this is weird. And then when it all connects, I was like, and then KJ's like, think of where you saw that. in the timeline. I'm like, "Oh my
I'm such an asshole sometimes. I'm sorry.
god,"
Yeah.
that they had this, like, such a subtle thing that is so connected into the story, so it makes it more like they did such a great job connecting everything together. Holy shit. My mind is blown at everything in this game. But like so and then you're like see like who is the ones that are going and putting out those torches and then you're just punched in the stomach again because like I thought they couldn't punch me in the stomach anymore and make me cry. And then I rage cat locks to KJ when I saw a certain little sweetheart from Partitio's storyline.
I mean, but it was funny because they did kind of make it. You're right. They did kind of make some of them obvious. I was actually more upset about the actual final boss because that like in terms of the characters that were tied to that. Like there was a certain character I was really upset about.
Yeah,
I was
I
so
did
mad,
not. I was so mad,
but it
and I
makes sense.
know exactly. I don't wanna, like, spoil that
Yeah.
reveal because I think again, I'm alluding to things, but I'm not coming out and saying it because, like, we want people to go and play this game. But, yeah, when I saw who that who that was, I was so mad. I, like,
Mhm.
threw my controller on the couch and I, like, walked away. I was just mad, and I was like, "Oh, did you wipe in your game again?" And I was like, "No, the
Wow.
plots."
Wow.
Because I was so mad at Cassie's wipe because I thought it was so unfair because he had got those four turns in a row and just
Mhm.
wiped me. And I was so under leveled with my other characters. I was like, okay, well, this is gonna suck. So I leveled up a little bit and then fought him again and I was fine.
Mhm.
But and then I knew he was gonna do speed stuff, so I kept like deflecting that.
Makes sense.
Um but like that part of like the story, and I was like, come on. I was like,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
really? And
Yep.
I was ready to destroy at that point. I'm like, "No, we're destroying this right now." But yeah, so, like, the end boss sequence was really, really cool. I guess I did this in the mobile, I didn't quite know that, but now
Yeah, they
I
did.
knew there was something cool that they did in the mobile version that they added into 2, and that must have been the end boss sequence.
Yeah, the like
And
8 characters, the 8 character thing was something they did in the mobile game.
so when I did the end boss, I wiped the first time. And it was also like, okay, I didn't quite get the mechanics right away and stuff like that. So it was kind of figuring out the mechanics of the fight. And then in the second one, I played a little rearranging and this ended up working out for me in the end so that I beat it on the second try. And that's I had Casti and Agnia in the same position. Now, I got all the secret classes, and oddly enough, I didn't I thought about doing it, but before I just was like, "Nah, I want the plot, I want a thing." So, I didn't get all the inventors abilities. So, I
Oh, that
didn't
might be why you weren't able that honestly might be why you struggled there too.
Yep. So, I didn't have the inventors. I had the arms master, I had the conjurer, and the arcanist.
Okay.
Arcanist. And so, I put Oswald as arcanist so that I could put Agnia as cleric because I
Okay.
didn't go around and get everybody's second or third license either, because I was kinda, like,
Oh.
progressing through and everything,
Mhm.
so everybody could only be one character, and then I had Casti as conjurer, and because I had her there, she saved me. So when he goes from form 1 to form 2 where everybody's, like, kinda laid out,
Mhm.
I he killed 3 of my party in the one team because they're all underleveled, right? So in
Wow.
Agnia's team, Agnia was alive, but Temenos was dead. So my second team was Agnia, Temenos, Throne, and Ochette.
Mhm.
And I put Particio in my because he was also really weak, so I put him up into the other team, and I put him in the same position as Ochette because I knew I would be using her more. And so for that second sequence, I had just the perfect order of everything where
Okay.
people were in the right spots. So when he wiped out 3 and had everybody else in critical health, I used the Conjurer's ability that revives, heals, maxes out our SP, but then you can't use them for 6 turns. And all I did was switch to Agnia and use her on those turns so that she buffed the party or healed them. So I didn't need Casti for those 6 turns. And that's how I ended up beating
Mm.
the end boss. And like, of course, using Hikari, Oswald, and Ochette as my damage dealers,
Mhm.
and then having Particio as like an item user or like basically an item user or reviving people or something like that, or keeping people's health up if Agnia didn't do enough, because Particio was number 4 slot and Agnia was number 1. So like he was always towards the end. If I didn't need him, I switched to Ochette and did damage. And Throne was the
Okay.
same, and she was in the same position as Hikari.
Mhm.
So again, if I needed somebody to heal or if I needed somebody to steal or not steal or like debuff or whatever, I could switch to her. And then Temenos and Oswald were in the same position, which I
See,
think
that's
that was a little
so
bit I should have swapped, but that's okay.
it's so
So,
funny because mine was all fucked up because I just went in with my best party. So I went in with,
see, I did that originally, and then when I saw the mechanics, I switched people around
but
because
it ended up
I
working
think
out
that's
for
why I got
me.
wiped too.
It ended up working out for me because I was able to just, I basically used one party and just you the only other character that I used in the other party really was Particio, and that was to um give Casti BP, right? So that she could then cast for everything. But like for me, I spammed Inventor. Inventor was great because with that final boss, I just made sure that anybody that was attacking was going to end up breaking. So I basically kept breaking the boss. So I beat the boss in like 4 or 5 turns or something ridiculous like that because I just broke the boss so quickly and then was able to just like freak the hell out with attacks. And so it was the case where I had the classes, but yeah, I had Throne as Inventor so that she had more damage flexibility and breaking flexibility, and I could then get her for 2 turns to be able to break to be able to do chip away multiple times. Um, I had Hikari as Arms Master, and to be honest, after that, I don't even remember who else I had with what. It was just that I had Oswald as cleric, and I had Casti as warrior for a bit. Um, but yeah, it was just that I basically was just making sure that I had coverage on everybody to be able to break, and I had the ability to get everybody BP whenever I needed to. And from there on out, it was just attack the boss and make sure that I could manage everything. And to be honest, also at did I have I don't know if I did. I think at that point I also had the like kind of OP beast with uh Ochette. So I did that too and that hit for a ton. So it was just like, yeah,
Yeah.
I was able to kind of manage that pretty easily because I was able to keep everyone's health up. I was able to keep everybody's BP up and like
The skill to be able to go over quadra 9 damage was so OP to put on Hikari, Ochette, and Oswald. That's who I had them on.
I had it on everybody.
Oh, did
I
you
had
have
it
it on
on
everybody?
I had it on everybody except Agnia, I believe.
I
Because
wish I had it on Temenos. That was the only one I regretted not having it on because
Mhm.
he has that OP light move that you can unlock by the end where
Yes.
he uses all his
Yes.
SP and hits you with light, and the enemy, like the end boss, was weak against light.
And I used that as well, like in
Yeah,
other
see, I
fights.
never
But
used that move
Mhm.
because I didn't have him with the damage broke, so I was like, "Okay, I'm not gonna use this because it's only gonna do quadra 9." So, which I know it would have been way more. So I kinda screwed up there, but Arcanist I found was really great on Oswald because what I would do is he had that light move that would boost everybody's MP depending on how much damage you did, but because the end boss, all the parts were always weak against light, it was just like I was constantly really filling everybody back up with their SP, and then I would use Oswald the next turn to do crazy damage, and then I'd switch back and forth with him like that. So like I had Arms Master on Hikari because the axe move was stupid strong.
Oh, the axe move was OP.
Yeah, it did like at the end sequence with like the end form where you're the all 8, I ended up buffing him with might. His crit, I had him on crit where he
Mhm.
had a higher chance to crit, and then all the weaknesses were uncovered.
Yeah.
And so when he hit that middle guy, it was like 40,000 each hit, and I was like, yeah, I almost
I
did
didn't
100,000 damage with just
I didn't
him.
have to do debuffs until the secret boss. Funny enough. Like debuffs I did need some for the
I
secret
didn't
boss.
end up using debuffs with the end boss sequence just because I had them arranged so well
Okay.
that I was able to like use Cassie to boost everybody. Then when he did that, like when you got him like halfway and he did that form where he just nukes you and
Mhm.
then resets, kind of almost.
Yep.
I used her conjurer ability, so she was out for 6 turns, but Agnia was the one keeping like just healing, so I just had her there.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
Yeah,
then
I
going
can
from
definitely
there,
see why
yeah,
that.
I didn't need to debuff at all. I buffed like hell, but like I
Okay.
didn't need to debuff.
Gotcha.
Um, and
I
so
can
I ended up
definitely
still
see why
winning.
Agnia's Conjurer would be really good because using that ability, like
That
I only
it
used
was
that
only
ability
good for
once.
that boss fight because
I
I'm
only
thinking
used it
about
once
it,
and I was
like
like,
it
wow,
wasn't
this
worth it.
sucks.
Yeah. That move would have sucked if you were in just a team of 4, like you are at the beginning where you have your main team and then halfway through that fight it switches to the backup team. I
Mhm.
was stupid and put the backup team last, so that's why that form took me longer the second try, just because I was
Mm.
like, "Ooh, they don't do as much damage as
Yeah.
my main team." So it's like it took longer. But then when I got to the second form when they did all 8, it made more sense to be like, okay, I can use Agnia instead of Casti. It's not like I lose a character. So that's the only time I felt like the Conjurer, like super revive, super HP, and SP move mattered. Was literally that one fight. Otherwise, I don't think I would have used it. And now hearing kind of how the secret boss goes, I don't think I would be able to use it there either because
No, using it in the
you're
secret,
down a character, which is not going to work.
like yeah, you can't be down a character for that many turns against
No.
the secret boss.
Whereas that
Also,
where you have 8 of them and you're swapping between them,
you're fine.
I'm fine because I have a backup character and Agnia could just heal. And she could also buff with her dancer move. So I'm like, I could keep putting might back up on people or the elemental attack raise on people if I had to. So I'm just like, I could lose her for 6 turns and not hurt, is
Mhm.
basically why that move worked
Okay.
for me.
Yeah, for me, it was the case that so I think its inventor has an ability that makes people have a turn the before anything else. Like it's like first, it's something with first in the name, but it's a skill that lets you go, like lets the people go first. So I abuse that too. What I would do is I would set my party up so that I would have um everybody have that. I would get the boss or whoever I was fighting down to 1 shield, and then I would make sure that I set it up so that I could then do and step ahead, 1 step ahead, yeah, or first step ahead or something like that. And then I would set it up so that whatever the future turn order was, right before the enemy attacked, I would be able to break them. That way, I would get as many moves in as possible before I broke them, and then I would break them on the turn that I would then be able to like continue on and then have another full turn. So I was basic there were a lot of times where and again, this is
That's
what I was talking
awesome.
about where
Holy
I
shit. That was a
basically
great strategy.
I tripled up the boss, the final boss before I even saw it attack. Like I was I was just making sure like, hey, I'm attacking first, and there is no way that this is like there's no if, ands, or buts about it. Like
Yeah.
it was ridiculous. And as soon as I unlocked that skill with Inventor, everyone learned it because you didn't even need to all you had to do was
Yeah,
or
everybody can
everyone
learn it
had
at
it.
that point,
Everyone
right?
equipped it rather. You didn't even need to learn it. You could just equip it. So after that I was like, "Oh, this is going on every character. I don't care. Like everyone's attacking first."
And
And
that's really
then
cool because, like, I
yeah.
used that on, like, my main people who I wanted to do the most damage on, but I didn't think to use it on every character. That's smart. That gives you, like, a free turn, yeah.
And that's what it was. It was like even if somebody wasn't doing damage, if I could use them to chip away at the shields,
Oh, the shields, yeah,
then they
yeah.
were helpful because that just allowed me to get another free turn later on. So yeah, like I basically was stun locking bosses. Like it was that's why I said
You were
I
stun locking, bullying those
I
bosses.
basically like and I felt bad a little bit until I fought the secret boss, and then I was like, "Oh, I don't feel bad anymore.
Yeah,
This
sounds
dude's
like
a
the
complete
secret boss is
asshole.
real
Like, I don't
hard.
feel bad anymore." But yeah, the
You were
fact that
so
you could
determined to beat that boss too, that you took like what, 10 tries or
I
something?
played and I and the thing is, so every attempt because so I basically did like 2 attempts to scout, but I didn't actually complete the attempts. I just went in, I kind of got the feel for it, and that excuse me, and then I quit. And then I went and I was like, okay, I need this. I was like, there's a certain monster I remember having. I got rid of it. I need that monster back. And then I'll be okay. And I got that monster because that monster like was helping me break the thing. Also, yes, hired help with the assassin is also OP. But the problem is you only end up like there's only so much money that you can have, especially when you're grinding with the best method in the game. Because if you're grinding with the best method in the game, this is also very spoilers. Probably, I don't know if you care about knowing how to grind in the game.
No, go for it. Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
the best way to
I'll
grind in
probably be asking you how to do it.
the
So
best way to grind in the game is after you finish Particio's final chapter, and then you do the like extra quest. You can recruit Alrond as a member of the party, and
he's my favorite.
he
What?
has a
Really?
possibility he has a possibility of giving you 100x exp on the turn.
Oh shit.
So that's how you grind in the game, but he costs like almost 200,000 to recruit him.
Oh,
Or
okay, okay.
he costs the how you get like when you capture the um what are they called? Octopuffs? If you capture the
Yeah.
king octopuffs, you get like the meat or whatever that they give you. You can also use like 4 or 6 of those. I think it's 3. You can recruit him with 3 of the octopuff things as well. So you either spend 180,000 or you hope that you can get those
Go get those like really
octopuff
rare meat
things. Like, but
drops. Yeah.
the thing is, I think only king and queen octopuffs drop them. So you just have to
Yeah.
grind those too. And I was like, I
You
don't want
get
to.
some items in the game where you can like those spawn more
Yeah,
regularly, but
they do.
it's still really hard to get
It's
them
still
in
a
battle,
pain.
I found.
Yeah, so I looked at it like, okay, I'll just grind money and then I'll do that. And then while I was grinding money, I ran into like a King Octopuff or two. And that's how Ochette ended up being my highest level character. Because in order to have all around in the party, she had to be in the party. And she ended up getting a bunch of experience out of that. So it ended up being the case where I was able to recruit him, but I didn't have as much money. So when I went into the secret boss, I only had like 2 or 300 grand, and so I could only use the assassin for so long. You can also recruit. You can use Temenos to recruit Alron, but Temenos has to be level 80 before you can do that. So you have to
Yeah.
like in theory, you basically have to recruit Alron a couple of times to get Temenos to level 80 before you can actually recruit him for free. So
Yeah.
that was one of the biggest things. But Alron is the key to leveling up a like getting levels quickly, but it's also RNG. Like you have to he has to level up. He has to roll the 100 thing. So
Yeah. Yeah, and so, like, you already have to have Temenos leveled up in order to recruit Temenos for free, so it's almost like by the time you get to that point, you're like, "I've already spent all my money trying to level Temenos up." Yeah, that was, that was KJ's. Uh, fair enough. Peaches, yeah, yeah, Peaches might be saying. But yeah, yeah, so, like, it's cool that there's, like, these, like, extra, like, mechanics that you I never used hired help. Again, because like I loved Partitio, I did, but like I had my main party that I always used, so I didn't really use Partitio a whole lot with hired help and stuff, so I couldn't like utilize that thing. But I did know about the assassin because KJ had showed me that he had finally like recruited the assassin or whatever. But I didn't know you could recruit Alron. I love him. He was so great. I liked his whole like story thing and everything. Uh oh really? That's awesome. Um, Also, I think that's a great thing to mention even just on the podcast is that like, when we announced this episode is that Octopath 2 is on buy one get one free at GameStop. I can't hear you, KJ, if you're talking.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries, no worries, no worries. Yeah, I figure you're dealing with the cat, so
We're good. We're good.
yeah, we're good.
But yeah, no, Alrond was dope, and being able to recruit him was cool. You do have to. It is locked behind a side quest, like I said, and it is the case where once you do it, you kind of have to utilize him with the best area to grind in the game. But that kind of flashes back to what I was saying, where if you go through that dungeon, and
Yeah.
then if you go through that dungeon and you then get the opportunity to get that boss as a random encounter, I was getting 230,000 experience whenever Elrond hit the 100. And I was,
Oh,
in
that's
that case,
awesome.
I was like save scumming it because he was so expensive. There's a save point right outside the dungeon. So you
Okay.
save, you go down, and you basically get the encounter, make sure that he does actually roll the 100 times experience, and then finish the fight. And in my case, I wasn't even necessarily killing the boss. I was capturing the bosses with Ochette. So it was the case
Okay.
where I just had to get them down to like 50%, capture
And
them, and then we
then
were
yeah.
good. So
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's awesome. That's a great tip. Like that'll help me for when cuz I'm definitely going to do I'm going to try the secret boss fight and stuff like that at some
yeah,
point.
it's fun. It's fun. It's just it is a lot of pain.
It is, but like also this game has just been fantastic and it deserved to be played to 100% for like anybody. And like I just want to say like for those of you who played this game along with us or listening right now and are going to go out like seriously going to go out and get this game and stuff like that, like
Mhm.
one, thankful to Square for giving me the key to this game, but also like just kind of like I'm going to be that person who preaches that like any JRPG fan buys this game
Yeah, I agree.
because like I had a freaking fantastic time from start to finish and everything I thought could have been improved in the first one was improved in this one. Which was absolutely fantastic. Is there anything else you want to mention or do we want to go through like our
I I want to mention my claim earlier, and I want to see if you
Oh yeah. All right.
so for anybody that's just getting here,
Yeah.
I said earlier in the podcast, this is the best game that Square has developed or published since the merger. Square Enix since the has developed or published since the merger. And I'll
Since the
stand on that
merger.
hill
Not
outside of
including, like,
remasters.
remasters. Obviously, remasters and
Yeah,
remakes of old games, take those out
yep.
because, like
I'm ignoring remasters, so I'm ignoring like the DS Chrono Trigger remaster or any of the Final Fantasy remasters or anything like that. Outside of remasters, this is the best game that Square has published or developed since the merger, and I'll stand by that.
alright, so you wanna know where I am?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Well, you're not gonna like my opinion.
No, I'm more than happy. But what I will say is, please give me what you think is better. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, alright, so I'm gonna tell you that Octopath Traveler 2 is. I agree with you.
Oh,
No fighting comes for me. That's why I said you're not gonna like it because
Polly
I'm not gonna
totally
fight
got
with you
me.
because I can't think of one. So like any of the games that I'm thinking of were pre-merger.
Yep.
Um, So like a couple of them that might be able to rival it are pre-merger. Anything post-merger, yeah, I'm thinking of all the post-merger games I've played. I'm thinking of all the stories. I'm thinking of the gameplay. I'm thinking of everything in those games, and I can't pick one that is better than this game in my experience.
Mhm.
Um, and like I also wanted to keep KJ on his toes there because I was also
That's
making
fair.
funny facial expressions while he was talking because I was just like, "Ee." But like it was also something like I agree with him. I cannot think of one. I
I think
can't give him an argument with that
the only
because I think
argument that people would make, and I have a counter argument to this, is some people will say, "But what about Final Fantasy 14?" My response to that is going to be
different
Final
kind of
Fantasy
game.
14, you can say that, but Final Fantasy 14 has had multiple expansions. So I don't think it's fair to look at Final
So
Fantasy 14 as a whole and say that, because it's been worked on multiple
yeah, and it
times.
also got reborn. So,
It
like,
also
Final
got
Fantasy
rebooted. Yeah, that's
14
another that's
released
a,
yeah, so, like,
it's a
it
whole
released,
nother.
it flopped hard,
Mhm.
and then they redid it better, kinda came back with it, and then it like, even when I'm talking to people, they're like, "Oh, A Realm Reborn's kinda boring until you get to this DLC or this expansion or that expansion, then things pick up," and stuff like that. So, like, yeah, you can't really compare a game that's been able to be worked on for 10, 15 years or whatever and have all these DLCs and have like all this fan commentary that they can listen to or not listen to and approve their game and not approve their game
Mhm.
and go through it. And it's also an MMO, which is a different kind of game.
Yeah.
Like I kind of argue like trying to compare that to Octopath Traveler 2 and having this like Octopath Traveler 2 had a lot of people work on it, but it's still the smaller team.
Yeah. That's
It's
why
still a
that's why
smaller
I said,
team.
like, I personally, like, I could see the argument, but it's also they're different, right?
Yeah, and I
And
would say and if you wanna, like, go to an argument site, I would say, yeah, Octopath Traveler 2 is the best single player. Is the best single player that came out of the merger, but you could still argue that it's the best that came out of the merger if you compare apples to apples, and that's if you look at just A Realm Reborn, taking out all the expansions, everything else, just look at f like, honestly, let's say Final Fantasy 14 OG is like Octopath Traveler 1 Octopath Traveler 1 was better than the OG of 14, but let's use that as a comparison. So then Octopath Traveler 2 is A Realm Reborn. If you took out everything else of the game, all the expansions, all the stuff, and just look at it, The Realm Reborn, so far in my experience with A Realm Reborn, I'd still like give it to Octopath Traveler 2. But again, I haven't beaten it, so I don't know if there's people listening or whatever who's
Mhm.
beaten A Realm Reborn and then beaten Octopath Traveler 2 and said one was better than the other. But yeah, that's the only argument that I could see being a fair comparison because, Octopath Traveler 2 doesn't have all these expansions and DLCs and stuff like that as well and have been developed over a long, long, long period of time. At the same time, I've heard also that Final Fantasy 14 is freaking fantastic and great, but like, yeah, I can't think of any other like I can't think of anything that can rival my experience with this game. Like the end sequence, the stories, the character, everything, like the night and day sequence and tying that in where it was like super smart to do that with their abilities and everything too was like I haven't seen games really do that. And
Mhm.
like I yeah, I'm gonna go with you on that one too. I'm on your side on that one.
ARR isn't bad, it's just the Agnia of
Agnia
14.
14. Okay,
That
see there.
that's
Thank
fair.
you.
That's fair.
There we go. So like if we're comparing apples to apples, we have to look at Octopath Traveler 2 with just A Realm Reborn. And if you're telling me that that is the Agnia of 14, then yes. We're still right. It's fine. So yeah, it's just like this game, holy crap. I was expecting it to be a good game, not gonna
Same.
lie, because Octopath Traveler 1 was a good game.
Mhm.
Um, I was looking at it being like, I hope they made the improvements that I was thinking when I was playing the first one. But I was also like, even if it was like, again, yeah, I would be like, okay. But no, they took Octopath Traveler 1. They listened to the feedback. They listened to everything. they improved it all and then gave us 2. And it's like, 2 is just a roller coaster of just intense, like, I didn't wanna put this game down. I'm glad we took the 2 months to do it because I got to do more of the game where I wasn't just
Mhm.
feeling like I had to push through the plot line or something like that. I got to do some side quests. I got to find all the secret classes and everything. So like I got to play with some of the mechanics and stuff like that. I got to explore the world. I found most places. I didn't find that bridge one, but I found most places.
The bridge place is OP, but it's also like that boss. Okay, so it is a boss again that they recycled from Octopath Traveler 1. And the boss was not nearly as difficult in Octopath Traveler 1, and it's still not super difficult in this game, but it has a cycle that like it's basically only vulnerable to magic. And it's only vulnerable to one type of magic. So, and it has an instant kill move. So
Oh my
like
god.
it can be kind of bullshit if you, depending on the rotations that you get. And like if I didn't have Ochette in the party, I would have game overed to that boss multiple times. But I happened to get lucky that I had Ochette in the party and was able to capture it. And I was like, oh, damn, that would have gotten real bad real fast. And it also has a move that resets its shields. So it was a case where it got close a lot.
Oof.
And the
Oof.
funny thing is, I didn't use Ochette to fight it the first time I did it. But it just so happens that Ochette was one of my like B team members. So I had to level her up a little bit. So she was in the party. And when I had it down, I think it either goes to that state when it's half health or 25% health. I can't remember. But that allows you to capture it. So I was able to just use the capture ability and capture. And I was like, oh, this makes things a lot easier. So that's what I did. I ended up having like 5 of that monster in my party.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, so like you had like that, like I didn't even find that monster either. But again, it's because of that bridge sequence. I missed that entirely. And now I'm just kind of like, so when we're done this podcast, I'm gonna load up my Octopath
Yeah,
2 save
I
file.
can tell you like exactly where it is. It's in the snowy area. I can let you know exactly where it
Okay,
is.
so
It's not a problem.
since we challenged the internet and our viewers and everybody, and I'm sure for later for when this comes up as a podcast and stuff like that, I'm sure some people will be very vocal. I think this is definitely needs to be a YouTube put on the YouTube because I feel like we're gonna
Yeah,
get a
no,
lot
we
of
definitely
people like
can.
fighting us. So, what would you rate the game out of
This is a
10?
top 10 RPG. This is like this is up there with the this is up there with the greats. I mean, this is up there with the
So, out of
Final
10,
Fantasy, like this is up there with the Final Fantasy 9, the
like
Suikoden
9 out of
2,
10,
the
9 out
Legend of
0.5
Dragoon.
out of 10. Would
So
you
it's
give
really
it?
tough for me when I start to get up there in like a when I start to get up there with like again games that are like I would consider the best of the best. It's really hard to differentiate number wise because if I give it a number, like hypothetically speaking, if I were to say, oh, Lunar is a 9.5 out of 10. And then I say Octopath Traveler 2 is a 9.5 out of 10. It almost makes it seem like they're equal, in my opinion, when like that's not
I
necessarily
see.
the case. So it's hard for me to give a number specifically. Um, so that's why I said like this game sits comfortably in my top 10 RPGs.
Okay. Okay, well that's fair. That's fair. Um I'm not going to do the cop out answer. Um
Wow! Wow, 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 wow. Wow. The
Hey, you
cop
call
out
me out
answer.
all the time when I
That
do
is a
honorable
legitimate
mentions.
That is a
No,
legitimate.
that's legitimately fair because you're right. It's hard to be like, okay, this is a 9.5 and this is a 9.5, but this
Exactly.
game came out like a decade ago. So, like, Octopath not only has like a bigger team than a lot of these JRPGs that we also
Mhm.
love, but they also have more money put into it because Square Enix is a bigger tyrant in the JRPG, like, not tyrant, but like a bigger, like entity in the JRPG thing, like even than they were back in the day. So like they're massive, massive now. So they have a lot more funding to throw behind it. And they just had, like they have the Unreal Engine that's like gotten better over the years and has gotten more expensive and stuff like that. But for me, I start to finish, um, like it's really like I have only one tiny, tiny flaw of this game. So it's like it's just shy of perfect for me. It is just shy of a perfect game for me. Which I can like some of my top 10 are I consider them perfect games for their time. And I don't like try to compare them to like future things and stuff like that at bigger times and stuff like that. But I am saying this is like the only thing holding it slightly back was just one story just didn't do it for me. I can
Mhm.
respect that it does it for everybody else, but that's the only one where I felt like the character and development stuff was a little bit like less powerful than everything else. So I'm going to literally give it my one of my higher scores and give it like a 9.8 out of 10. And it's literally just because that one story pulls it just a tiny bit down from being a perfect game for me.
Okay,
Like
you're gonna
just,
yell at
just
me now that you called me out. You're gonna yell at me after this. But where's this game fall in your grand scheme of RPGs then? If there are only a few perfect games for you because of their time, I'm thinking like you're gonna say Chrono Trigger, you're gonna say Final Fantasy VI. Like I feel like I need to now defend myself a little bit for
it
my cop
it
out answer.
honestly might be like number 2 for me. It might be a 2 or a 3 up there. Like it's high up
Wow.
there for me. Honestly, I love those games, don't get me wrong and stuff like that. Like they're fantastic. Like I mean, I can definitively say it didn't beat Chrono Trigger for me,
Okay.
but it definitely came the closest of an RPG for me in a long time. Like it definitely came closest to me for a lot of them. And like some of them are super great and powerful and love like Xenogears is like probably in there at this point too, just for its story. But for me, Octopath Traveler 2, like gameplay, story, music, sound effects, tie-ins, battle mechanics, things like that, it is like Chrono Trigger is like perfect to me, and I don't know if anything ever is gonna ever knock that off. There because there's also a bunch of stuff surrounding Chrono Trigger is why I feel that way.
Mhm.
But Octopath Traveler 2 is like it's up there. Like I would put it up like I'd have to really think about it. Maybe it'd be 3 or something like that. But like I feel like it's very close to being like a perfect game and thus needs to be as close to like Chrono Trigger as possible. Like, I don't know. I thought this game was absolutely fantastic. I don't even know how they could improve it except for the one story that fell a little bit.
The
If they,
only
like,
way that they
made
could
the
improve it,
next game and made that all 8 stories just slam, like,
if if they
I
swapped
don't know.
Primrose and Agnia, this would be like,
This would be guaranteed number 2 for me if they swapped Primrose
yeah, if they
and
swapped
Agnia
Primrose and
together.
Agnia, this
Yeah,
game would be.
yeah. If we take Primrose from Octopath 1, put her in and kick Agnia out. And I would say, yeah, it would be, like, right behind Chrono Trigger for me. Like,
Yeah.
but I think everybody has that game that no matter what comes out, it just there's a game in your heart that might never be touched. And it just might be out of reach. And for me, that's Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is a big reason why I even became an RPG gamer. Like it has so much ties ins for me and so much that I'm super things. So like, but like Octopath Traveler 2 being up there for me, like oh, I don't know if it's above 6 or not, but, like, it's so close, it might actually I don't know how I
I
feel.
mean, I can
I'm put
just.
on the spot here, but it's definitely, like, towards the top of the 10. How about you? Where does it sit for you? Like,
I
is
was
it
gonna
towards the
say
top?
I can hurt some feelings right now and say this is a better game than Final Fantasy VI, but I'll just I'll just throw that out there.
Stop! We've already broken their heart by like slamming
Holly,
14 in this. Somehow we
I'm
put 14 in this.
I am coming out swinging. It's all good. Um,
KJ wants to get us canceled for our
I'm thinking
usage.
about it. I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Um,
See, this is what I mean. So, like, if I'm really
the
thinking about it, it might actually pop Final Fantasy 6 out of like I'd have to like really think about it and really think about the games, and I might even have to like the next time we do a top 10, I might have to actually replay some of these older ones and just see where they feel for me because like it's so high for me. But yeah, I want to know where it is. Is it like mid tier for you? Is it
oh
high?
no no
Is it
no,
low?
this is up there. I will say the only like so I'm kind of I try to take my because my favorite game is Golden Sun. And even though I think Golden Sun is a great game, there are still games that I have played that are better than Golden Sun. I acknowledge that. Like I will swear by my love for Golden Sun, but I acknowledge there are games better than Golden Sun. Outside of Suikoden 2, I don't think I've played a better RPG than this game.
Yeah,
Like
see that
front to
like
back. I
outside of
outside of
like Chrono
Suikoden
Trigger's
2,
love for me, like I'm really struggling to see if there's one that would be above Octo 2 for me too.
yeah,
And
I
I haven't
don't
played Suikoden 2, so that could all change because I'm gonna be playing Suikoden 1
yeah.
in the summer. So, looking at my timeline, it's probably Suikoden 1's gonna be in the summer, so Suikoden 2 is probably gonna be in the early fall, late summer.
Mhm.
So,
Like
like, I haven't
I
even
think
touched that game yet.
I think this would slightly, ever so slightly edge out Legend of Dragoon for me.
Oh,
And that
that's
Legend of
big. See, that's
like
me in Final Fantasy 6, it might actually
I would
like
say like I mean my gold standard for RPGs is Suikoden 2, Legend of Dragoon, and then Final Fantasy 9. This game is better than Final Fantasy 9. As much as it pains me to say it, like I love Final Fantasy 9, this game is this game is so good. Like it is so yeah, I would
and my top 3, I think were, when we did them, it was Chrono Trigger, I think it was Valkyrie Profile, and Final Fantasy 6.
mhm.
So, like, this I'd have to
I asked
really
a
think.
question that made Polly really like think.
It it might bump 6, it might even bump Valkyrie Profile, I don't know, like,
Yeah,
it's
this I
this
think
this
this was
hit
better than
really hard, and I didn't expect it to, so it's like, I knew this podcast was coming up, and I knew I had such strong positive feelings for it, but I'm like, you hit me with the, where is it in top 10? And I'm like, "Oh my god," like, it's not gonna dethrone Chrono Trigger, but, like, holy shit, it's so good. It's so good. It's so hard, like, it's definitely up there. It's definitely at the top. Just what game does it bump out? And I thought about this, and I might actually go back and play, like, Valkyrie Profile all the way through to see
see,
if
that's the
it,
thing, like, I
but,
think
like,
I
it's hard too because Valkyrie Profile was also one of the first games that had a woman protagonist that was super strong and super powerful in it.
mhm.
But, like, Octopath Traveler 2 has some powerful women. I'm just gonna say this right now. Casti and Throne are, like,
I just
even Ochette, like, you know, she
I think the
like
biggest thing for me is like I said, there are points like I've played a lot of these games recently too, right? Like I played Valkyrie Profile recently. I played Lunar recently. I've played Legend of Dragoon fairly recently.
yeah,
I
you
played
did. You've
Xenogears
played a lot of those ones.
recently. And I'm just thinking like,
The irony that your top 10 is now all games you've played recently.
I mean, it's getting to that point. It's funny because that I mean, outside of
It's
like
true.
Golden Sun
The more
and
we play, the
Final
more we
Fantasy
expand
9.
our palette, the more things start to shuffle.
Exactly. No, it puts things into it starts to put things into perspective more for you in terms of these different games.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, Suikoden 2 in my opinion is in a league of its own
It's
just
like
with
Chrono
how they
Trigger for
did
me.
everything and yeah, just in general that game is in a league of its own. But for me, I'm looking at it and like I as much as I love Legend of Dragoon, it does have some slow points, and it does have some, like, for example, I think something like Legend of Dragoon, having characters that I don't really care about in that game with that story, make it's almost more impactful than Agnia being in the story and me not necessarily caring about Agnia, right? Because when you're, and I think that's one
Yeah.
of the strengths of Octopath in general, like their process is that because it's 8 split stories, if you have to, if you don't necessarily like a character or their story, it doesn't necessarily take away from the grand scheme of things, because their story is only a small part of the overall aspect of it, right? Whereas, like, if, I mean, there's characters that I don't like in certain games. Like, perfect example, I don't like Steiner in Final Fantasy 9, and that takes away Steiner's parts in the
Is
story,
way more impactful than
take
Agnia's. Yeah, I see what
away
yeah.
from parts where I'm like, damn, I really loved this interaction with, like, we'll say Zidane and Vivi, but then Steiner was there and he brought it down for me. So even though I, again, like, we'll talk about favorite games, and, like, yeah, nothing will. There's a very small chance that anything will ever touch games like Golden Sun and Final Fantasy 9. But if I'm looking at how good the game is and sort of
Yeah.
rating it on the things that I think are make a good or even great RPG, you start to nitpick those things. And yeah, I think there's a lot less things in Octopath 2 that I can really nitpick and dock it for, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
that's just
And like I was gonna counter argue just saying, but like with Octopath, you have to go through that character's stories to accomplish all the way. So even though you don't like Agnia, we still have to like suffer through her story. But the thing that they improved with that is that you could fast forward. You
yeah.
could fast forward it and you don't have to actually experience the story. So they kind of, it's like they thought about that and being like, okay, maybe one or two characters might not jive with people. So
Mhm.
here, we'll give them a fast forward kind of thing so they can push through it. So it's less impactful than, like you said, with Steiner, where he's like intermingled into the plot line. And when you don't like him as a character and he's there from start to finish as being kind of a central character, it's more impactful than Agnia, where you can like speed through her chapter and you're not going to miss anything. The big thing is you don't really miss anything in hers because hers was like one of the only ones that didn't really connect to the
Mhm.
overall it like I'm going so like it was it was the one we could skip. So it was fortunate that that was the one that we didn't end up liking. Um but I do kind of want to make a little bit of a hot take myself. Usually I leave these to KJ, but like I kind of want to say a hot take
Wow.
myself. I
Wow.
think Octopath Traveler 2 is bringing us back to when Final Fantasy games hit me better. So, like, a lot of people are arguing and stuff like that, that Final Fantasy has gotten so distant from what made them great and their
Mhm.
roots and stuff like that, whereas they just keep kind of going out and out. And that might appeal to some people. Like action RPGs, those kind of games do appeal to a group of people. And like for me, I love Final Fantasy 7 Remake. Don't get me wrong. I love that they went in an action direction. But Octopath Traveler 2 is like bringing me back to the reason why Final Fantasy 6 is higher than Final Fantasy 7 for me. And so, like, for them
Mm.
as a company to have brought that in, even though it's not a Final Fantasy title, it's like we're bringing me back to like why I love RPGs in the first place. And I think that's going to be a very powerful thing that's going to sway me into like, I'm not going to be able to really, like, I'm going to be putting it really high because that's like, it's done by the same company that kind of pulled me into JRPGs to begin with,
Yeah.
Chrono Trigger and FF6, that I find Octopath Traveler 2 is a great homage to the fans who say, hey, Final Fantasy's gotten to not Final Fantasy for them,
Yep.
that play Octopath then. Play Octopath Traveler 1, play Octopath Traveler 2, and you're getting that I feel like it's the same feeling for me. I don't know if you agree, but even Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, and arguing like some people like really love 9, some people really love 7, stuff like that. Even those ones, let's just say PlayStation and back era. It's bringing me back to those. It's bringing me back to like turn-based and but still being an updated fantastic game that can rival games today for me. Like, and I know that might be a bit of a hot take, and I know there's a lot of people who argue that action RPGs is the way of the future, and those are the games that are better than turn-based RPGs and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But like, I like Octopath Traveler 2 is like bringing me back to those feelings and love that I played way back, like those nostalgic feelings back when I was a little kid playing Chrono Trigger and then being pulled into RPGs. It's great to pull me back into that. I
Yeah.
mean, it ripped my heart out in so many ways, but like they pull me back. And I would
Yeah, Chrono
argue that
Trigger doesn't exactly
Octopath 2 is kind of like what people are trying to get Final Fantasy to go back to.
Chrono
That's what
Trigger doesn't
Octopath
exactly
is.
rip your heart out in the same way or at all.
It's a different kinda like it's a different kind of feeling, and some of the endings are kinda, like, more gut-wrenching and stuff like that, but, like, you're right, it's a different kind of feeling with Chrono
Mhm.
Trigger between Octopath, and Octopath definitely is, like, the other side of it where it can rip your heart out, it can stop at it, it doesn't care about your feelings, but it's still fantastic. So it's like, it may not top Chrono Trigger for me, but it's definitely looking like it might pull ahead of the others. It's like getting a Final Fantasy 6 remaster for me in the sense of, like, how it felt and stuff like that is, like, it just brought me back to that era,
Mhm.
being the pixel stuff, but being, like also being current era of, like, top for me, so that might get some people angry at me, but that's my opinion.
It's all good. We got hot takes.
We've got
That's
several of
what we're
them in
here.
this stream.
That's
Uh,
why we're here. We got hot takes.
yeah. Yeah, and so, like and again, I'm not, like, knocking action RPGs, no,
Mhm.
but, like, comparing, like, apples to apples, Octopath 2 hits more like old school Final Fantasy might have for people, maybe even, like, probably better, like, you're saying you probably pulls ahead Final Fantasy 9 as a better game for
Yeah.
you, and, like me, I'm struggling to think of, like, if this is better than Final Fantasy 6 for me or not, but, like, I'm leaning on that it is, and so, it's like and then action RPGs are a different feel for me. It's a different kind of RPG for me. And so,
Makes
uh,
sense.
yeah, and, like, I'm gonna say it right now. I know there's been a few places that have said this game was worse than the first one, or they reviewed it kinda lower and stuff. But one, it sometimes feels like they don't play all the way through the game,
Exactly.
kinda like what Dark mentioned, is that these critics and reviewers don't go all the way through like we did. And it could be, again, they were, like, criticizing it of not connecting, but they just didn't get that far. But also, like, I think it's a bit of like, a spit in the face of this game that they did take everything from 1 and improve it, so giving it a lower score of 1 to me is completely false
Yeah, it's
at
silly.
that instance. It's like when you take your feedback and you take everything that might have been quality of life issues from the first one and you fix it in its
Mhm.
sequel and then still giving us a powerful story, still giving us powerful characters that we love, more actually, I would argue. And like, but also keeping things like the pixel graphics and the music and the sound effects and stuff like that the same and improving a little bit there, but like focusing on stuff. I can't rate this lower than that, like the first one at all, because it's like in every aspect, it's better than the first one for me
Yeah.
in every way. And then
When
that
you
also means to me as a developer, thank you for like looking at your game, listening to the feedback and stuff, and then just somehow popping out a pretty well almost masterpiece, in my opinion,
Yeah. No, I
of a game
totally agree. Like,
afterwards. Like
100%.
I think the reviews that score this lower than a 9 are wrong. Like, are wrong. Or the ones that literally say that it is worse than the second or the first game is definitely wrong, and I'm gonna stand on that. I will die on that hill of in defense of this game. So, like, it definitely felt like it was more like people who like, even when I was reading some of them, I was like, "It just feels like you didn't play all the way through the game." Or
Mhm.
maybe or it was somebody who didn't like the first game. They didn't like it. So then
That
they're reviewing the second one, and then
Yep.
it's like, like, this I realize we are super passionate about this game, but if you're not into, like, turn-based RPGs and you're not into, like, sprite-based graphics and stuff, you might not be into this game.
Wait,
Like,
that's a perfect point. The people that reviewed this game the way they did probably started with Agnia. They probably started with Agnia. Dark is right. That's probably why they
they
felt
they
that way.
did Agnia, was like, "Nope," and then they reviewed it.
Yep, that's
I mean, they could like, especially if they played the first one, maybe they picked the dancer expecting, like, Primrose.
See, but that's actually
Primrose
an
Story.
interesting that's an interesting take because I did the exact opposite. I thought about it and I was like, okay, what characters from the first game didn't I like? And I was like, I didn't really care for Therian, the thief. I was like, I didn't really care for the thief. I didn't really care for Cyrus, who was the
The scholar.
magician, the cleric, not cleric, the
The
scholar.
scholar, yeah,
I was like, I didn't really care for them, and I didn't really care for Hanet. So I was like, those
yeah.
three are probably. I was like,
I
I'm gonna go
actually even
through.
didn't really care about Olberic myself.
Okay,
Like,
I was a fan of.
I'm a little bit opposite where I liked Cyrus, but I didn't like Olberic.
Okay, I liked Ulbrich because of. I also liked Ulbrich because of his ties to his later ties to the true ending. I thought that was, I thought
Okay.
that was
So
really cool.
maybe I'll have a different opinion once I go through that.
You
Okay.
you might. You probably, if you didn't really like him to begin with, you probably won't. Because like I thought he was kind of cool. But yeah. So I went in with the mindset of, hey, I'm gonna at least consider the classes that I didn't like as my starting class because I want a different experience. So immediately said, with I'm going to try to stay away from warrior and I'm going to try to stay away from cleric. And so I looked at all the characters and I was like, oh, I hated the thief class. And I wasn't really a fan of the thief. Maybe they improved it. And I was like, and this character kind of looks badass. And I can make sure that I'm getting money and everything in the game, like getting money and getting items. So screw it, I'm gonna roll with the thief. And it was a good decision in my opinion. But like, yeah, I think they just looked at everything. They looked at all the criticisms and they said, we are going to make changes. We're going to make sure that the stories tie together. We're going to make sure that there's more interaction than just like the Tails game esque, like push start to pop this up, something like that. So,
Yeah. Them interacting in battle was hype. I
yeah,
got so
the
excited when they're
battle
like, your
interactions were dope.
characters are like cheering each other on. And then
That was
like
really cool.
devastated when you die. Like when like Oswald, like one time Oswald died and Cassie's like, Oswald, no, we need you. And she like sounded like she was gonna cry.
Mhm.
And I was like, stop. I didn't mean for him to die. Please stop making me feel bad.
The game
But
about her
like
making Polly feel bad. How
like,
dare it?
they just like, oh my goodness. Everything I could think of that I could have made criticisms for the first game, they just took all of that and they made it great in this one. And like, I was like KJ, I had like 3 characters I didn't really particularly vibe with, 3 or 4 characters that I wasn't super in love with in the first game.
Mhm.
And now to go down to only 1 character I didn't is a huge improvement
Oh yeah.
on story writing. Huge improvement on their part. You know what I mean? Like, to me, going from, like, a few stories that multiple people can arguably say they weren't, like, super thrilled with. Like, some people did like the Therion, but when I talk to people about Octopath 1, there are several stories that people are like, "Eh." But in this one, it's, like, almost universally, it's just the one, unless you're an Idol fan. Like, I've heard a few people like, "Oh, I love Agnia, she's Idol, like, I like Idol anime." I'm like, "Okay, well, that makes
Yeah,
sense."
that's just not that's not me. I'm just like Agnia's story was not it for me, but hey, I also like more like dark stories that are filled with things like betrayal and like
I should have
having to get
tagged
revenge and
this
shit like
Twitch
that.
stream with emotional damage. I should have tagged that as one of the tags.
True. Okay,
Yeah.
so I guess my question is, do you have anything else, or we can kind of wrap up and give like the next month, like next time on Turn-Based Tangents kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we've pretty well, like, covered, I think we pretty well covered everything.
Mhm.
One thing I also wanted to point out is that I found they had more, like, 2D imagery,
Huh.
and I thought
Okay.
that was kinda cool. I like that they added a little bit more of that from the second one over the first. I forgot to mention that when we were talking about art styles and stuff like that. I
Mhm.
do like the sketching and art style work of it. I always liked that in the first one, but the second one I felt like they did a little bit more.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we covered literally everything. I think we've had some hot takes on here too, so some people might be throwing hands currently.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I'm so ready for all of the backlash, but we'll see. I'm excited.
we'll see, we'll
It'll
see.
make for good
But
conversation.
but yeah. Yeah, I 9.8, and KJ says, "In my top 10, high up in my top 10." Yep, same. I would argue also same, high up on my top 10.
Okay.
Pretty
Um
well damn near perfect, which
so do
is
you
shocking.
wanna tell everybody, I know you alluded to it earlier. Do you want to tell everybody what our next game is and what the plan is going forward?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the plan going forward. So KJ and I have been politely bullied
Yeah.
into trying that's the best way I can explain it.
Yeah.
Politely bullied or pushed into trying the Trail series. So KJ and I have never played the Trail series before. We played a little bit of some of the demos at PAX East, but we were already at that point interested, and we had already planned on doing some of the podcasts on Trails games. So we are starting the next game. If you guys want to join us playing off stream with us, is Trails in the Sky. It was the game we were told to start with first, to get into the Trail series because they all kind of connect to each other. So we kind of have to start with the older ones to get into more of the newer ones. And we're definitely so shout outs to Pstone underscore on Twitch and Kane Highwind on Twitch for basically bugging us forever since knowing us
Pretty
to
much.
play the Trail series. Because we are finally diving into that and we're playing Trails in the Sky. And in actual fact, we're doing back to back.
Mhm.
We're doing Trails in the Sky and then we're doing Trails in the Sky. Is it SC? Is number two?
SC second chapter. Yep.
Yep, second chapter. So second chapter. We're doing them back to back. Um, the way we're hoping to plan it is that so from now until probably towards the end of May, will be when we do the podcast because I have a really busy month in May. So I've told most of my viewers and stuff like that, told KJ that I have a convention. My largest convention that I sell my art at is at the end of May. So we're giving me as much time for the first one as possible. But then we're playing SC right away after that. So it'll be May is Trails of the Sky, and Trails of the Sky SC will be June.
And it might be the
Um,
case that like we because we can kind of be flexible about that. It might be the case that because so from what I've heard, Trails in the Sky 1 and then SC are like back to back. Like they're almost
yes,
like Golden Sun 1 and 2 where they're split games, but they are like they pick up right after each other with like extending the same story arc. So it might be the case that we play both games and then do like a
a
bigger
review of
podcast,
one and two. Yeah.
like a bigger podcast episode in June based on sort of Polly's
Yeah. So
availability and my
the
availability. I know your birthday, I say your birthday, your actual birthday is in June. So
my actual birthday. Yeah.
we'll
Thank you for specifying that.
we'll actually you'll have some of that like some
Yeah.
stuff like
So
around that to plan around. But yeah, if worst case is we end up doing sort of a podcast episode at the end of June to kind of go over both games. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to continue to sort of record other games,
Yeah. Other
like record
episodes
other
of
podcasts
Turnbased.
rather off
Yes.
stream. And then we're
Mhm.
still publishing those to Spotify, to Google Podcasts, to Amazon Music Podcasts, all that stuff.
Yeah,
So
so
that
we'll still
way
have, like,
it's extra
episodes
content.
play in May, and I really thank KJ for this one because, 1, we knew, like, the plot that connected kind of like the Golden Sun 1 and 2, with Trails of the Sky, but also 2, it made sense to push them up even just in that because with May being so busy, this way it's a little bit less of, I have to get one done because I feel like I'm gonna be trying to play as much as possible of 1 and 2, and this way we do like a special episode of June of 1 and 2, and we'll have other recordings. I know KJ and I have talked, and we're gonna do like a little bit of tease, but we've both beat Xenogears now, and that's all we're gonna
True.
say. So we'll still have episodes playing like in May and stuff like that, just in case we don't do a stream in May, and we might just do the stream of both games in June. It also gives our community a little bit more time because I feel like the community is going to want to play 1 and 2 back to back as well
Mhm.
because they connect so much story wise. Apparently, we're going in blind, the two of us, but it's just what we've heard from P Stone and Kane and stuff like that who've played the games. And so yeah, so just in case we don't stream 1 in May, and stream it in June, it's just we're gonna just combine the 2 of them if it ends up, or if it ends up working out that we both still end up beating the first one, we might do it in May
Yeah,
and
we'll figure it out. We'll play it by
anyway,
ear.
it just depends on how busy we are and stuff like that. So but yeah, I'm really, really excited about it. I like see next to like nothing, like even like merch wise and things like that of the
I
Trails
know
series,
nothing.
but I've heard so many good things about the series and I've always wanted to dive into it. KJ and I are also saying that if we're really enjoying Sky, you might see some Trails games streamed by us
Potentially.
potentially. So it's one of those things that we're like really, really hyped in because we know this series is very beloved, but it's not something we've ever experienced.
Yeah,
So
the Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky. Yep, that is
yeah,
the full
yep,
name of the
that's the
game.
full title. Yep,
It's available on PSP and Steam.
Steam, yeah.
So
And
I think the first
I'll be playing the Steam versions because the PSP copies were way too
I
out of
will
my
also
price
be
range.
playing the Steam version.
SMT to Persona. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, they're generally and they sometimes do go on sale. I got my 2 copies on sale because Peastone was like, "They're on sale." And I was like, "Yes, okay, let's go get them." So I bought a few Trails games when they were on sale.
Yeah,
Uh,
on PSP they're pretty expensive.
they're very expensive on PSP.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the market of, like, a lot of JRPGs this right now, especially, like, retro ones and stuff like that, are pretty expensive to get the physical copies of them. So, PSP ones kinda fall into that, um,
Mhm.
unfortunately. So we both kinda were like and we don't know the thing is we wouldn't mind owning them, but we don't know if we're gonna even like them. So we have no experience in the series at all, neither one of us. I was showing off, I have a Legend of Heroes game, but I've never played it for the PSP. So it's just like we've never neither one of us have experienced the series at all, so we have no idea, going in. But they're pretty expensive. Right now, so it's just like let's just do the PC version. And we recommend anybody wanting to follow along with us get the PC versions because they're cheaper and easier to acquire.
Yeah. All right.
But
So
yeah,
I think that just
yeah,
about wraps up things. So thanks everybody for another episode of Turn-Based Tangents. It's been a lot of fun. A lot of hot takes.
yeah. Thanks for everybody coming in, and also special thanks to Shane for writing in there. That was amazing. Thank you for bringing your community over, Shane. That was really sweet of you. If you're still here and anybody's still lurking and hanging out, sorry that we don't do as like big of like flow bow raid when we're doing our podcast
Yeah.
episodes. And I was in the middle of a tangent, so
That's what
when
this
it
is
came
about.
in,
It's always about tangents, but
but we very much appreciate everybody who hung out, everybody who came in.
and everybody that's
This
listening because we are
and everybody
still
listening,
yeah.
yeah,
Anybody
everybody who's
listening
like
in, we appreciate you as well. Thank y'all so much.
Yeah, listening to our podcast, listening to the episodes and stuff like that means a lot to us. We're trying to branch out more. We're both really gung ho about this. We've been really enjoying it. So, getting the feedback that like people in chat like right now, for those who can see the Twitch VOD, or here right now, or for those who are listening and stuff like that, like we can see people are really enjoying it. But also, like we really appreciate those listening, who are listening at later dates and stuff. It really really means a lot to us. Like we have a link tree now that like links to everything. So it links to our YouTube channel, it links to our podcast, like the actual, like just the audio versions of them,
Mhm.
like on Spotify and stuff like that, Amazon and everything. So we're on all kinds of different things. We really appreciate it. Hitting those follow buttons, hitting those subscribes, listening to our podcast on those other platforms is just as fantastic as being here live while we're recording. It means so much to us, and we thank you all, to both mine and KJ's communities, and those brought in to with Shane and anybody else who raids during our streams. We really, really appreciate it.